Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm doing this recording on October 4th. This video is about the potential peace agreement between the Israelis and Hamas in Gaza to try to end the Gaza war. There is a peace agreement that was offered that's a 20-point plan by Trump. And last night, Trump stated that there is a potentiality of Hamas accepting the plan. But when you further dive into the details, you find out that Hamas is only agreeing to parts of the 20-point plan. So there is a high probability that this will fail. It'll either fail in the next few days, or there's some sort of peace agreement with an understanding that there's going to be further discussion of the other points of the plan down the road, which will only be kicking the can down the road and not solving the problem. One benefit of it would be to get all the hostages back. But it doesn't really truly solve the problem unless all 20 points are accepted. So we're at a crossroad here. And I'm going to play a bunch of videos. Just keep that in mind, that this hasn't been fully agreed to by Hamas, this 20-point plan. And because of that, it's most likely going to fail in the short term or the long term. My concern is that a false peace is created, and that when we go into next year in September, so it's September of 2026, that year in the Jewish calendar is very problematic because the shofar is not blown on Rosh Hashanah, and it could be a very dangerous time. 2025 and into 2026, up to September of 2026, is not going to be a dangerous year. But from 2026 September to 2027 of October, that's dangerous. And I have a feeling that we're setting up for this calamity because of this false peace. Now, the problem that I have with Trump is that he has a tendency to be over-optimistic when it may be in his benefit, and not focusing on Hamas accepting to all 20 points of the plan may lead to something much worse down the road. With that, please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on X and on GETTR. You can also follow me on Substack, TikTok, and Patreon. Please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. I have thousands of videos for free. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel and my Substack channel. That way, I have the means to be able to make the content and to provide it for free for everybody. You can also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products I offer. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology. Share the links, ask your social media to follow me. I greatly appreciate it. Let me talk about one particular great product that I have that you'll need for the fall and the winter. If you've been paying attention, cases are going up, water analysis, you're starting to notice that those analyses are showing that the fall and the winter will be problematic in the United States. I don't want to say what it is because it's going to cause some strikes on the channel. So you know what I'm talking about. You need to prepare. You need to prepare for the fall and winter season. If you don't, it's going to cause problems. I mentioned in multiple videos what happens when you are pulsed naturally or through the inoculation, what happens to the immune system. So you need to mitigate. If you mitigate, you reduce the severity. One great product that I have is a structural nano silver toothpaste. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, help the gum line's health, and neutralize. Very important to take in the fall and the winter. But you should be taking it every day throughout the year. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household and mitigate the problem, especially for the fall and the winter. And I also have structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in lavender, peppermint, also in charcoal tea tree and lemongrass. So please go to my store, get the structural nano silver soaps, use them every day, but especially during the fall and winter season. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. This is variance 24.
This Saturday, Israel's military said that Gaza City remains a dangerous combat zone. Earlier, the Israeli government said it was preparing to immediately implement the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The U.S. president had told Israel to stop bombing the enclave. However, Gaza's civil defense agency reported heavy bombardment overnight. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have accepted parts of the peace proposal. For more, let's speak to our correspondent in Jerusalem, DrPaulCottrell. I'll let you, Noga. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a confusing and a busy day. Media reports, rumors, speculation. Noga, can you take us through it all?
That is absolutely right, Will. I don't remember a day like this almost in 2 years since this war began. And we are still in a whirlwind, let me say, with conflicting reports and rumors and positioning from different interested parties coming at us every few minutes. And it's difficult to make complete sense of all of these changes ahead of concrete steps being taken. But in terms of concrete steps, I do understand that the Israeli negotiating team will leave Israel as soon as a few hours from now for Cairo, which is set to be the new site of renewed negotiations. Again, it's my understanding that the person Prime Minister Netanyahu has nominated to head this team is his right-hand man, his top consigliere, Ron Dermer, the former U.S. ambassador to the United States. And this is being received with great fear by the families of hostages here in Israel, because he was appointed by Netanyahu to head the hostage negotiating team some 250 days ago, when Netanyahu fired the then head of the Shin Bet security agency and the head of the Mossad to be replaced with this crony of his. And since then, not one hostage was released. So there's great fear on the Israeli side that this could be torpedoed. In terms of Hamas, the latest we're hearing is that there may be something of an internal division, and that may explain the conflicting messages we're hearing there. The Wall Street Journal reports, citing Arab sources, in other words, sources in Egypt and in Qatar, among the mediating nations, that there is a division between what is called the political leadership of the Hamas terror group that sits in Qatar, led by Khalil al-Haya, who was the subject of a failed Israeli assassination attempt just a few weeks ago, and Izzadin al-Haddad, the military leader of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. There may be a conflict there with Izzadin al-Haddad refusing this Trump deal, and possibly faced with a more realpolitik situation, the political leadership of Hamas in Doha acknowledging that they have to go for this. In Israel, we're also getting complex leaks from the authorities here. For example, just a few minutes ago, an unnamed Israeli source told the national broadcaster here that Israel does not take Hamas's declaration last night as an acceptance of the Trump framework, as Donald Trump did accept it. So the ceasefire, such as it is right now, has been very much forced on Israel. What I know is that the bombing and the shelling did continue overnight, but that today we were formally informed by the army that the army had retreated into only defensive positions, shooting only in self-defense. It still remains an extremely dangerous situation. I haven't heard of air sorties since the morning over Gaza, but it is true that the Israeli military spokesman in the Arabic language did put out an advisory urging the residents of Gaza City not to return, saying that this is still an active war zone. So what we're seeing is, on the one hand, extremely dramatic developments, such that we might see the almost miraculous sight of Israeli hostages being released, even within a matter of hours or days. That is clearly a possibility right now. And yet, this entire momentum could still fall apart if obstacles that each side may see in its interest come into play. One important thing to add to this, Will, is today is Saturday, it's the Jewish Sabbath. Much of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet many of them are observant Jews, don't respond. It's unclear if these ministers are even aware fully of what has gone on in the last 12 very significant hours. And so Netanyahu could find himself with a rebellion among his extremist cabinet members also as early as tonight, just as thousands of Israelis again hit the streets in vast protest planned tonight to try and push this deal through.
Yeah, and so many moving parts there, Nova, as you outlined. The internal politics of Israel, the leadership of Hamas, its political and military branches. I mean, if you just had to guess, what are the chances that this deal could be achieved?
Well, several things seem to have happened to change the atmosphere. One is that the strike I mentioned just a few moments ago, the Israeli strike against Hamas leadership in Doha, the Qatari capital, appears to have been a very severe miscalculation on Prime Minister Netanyahu's part. It was, first of all, undertaken against the advice of his military chiefs. That we know for a fact, against the advice of the Israeli army, against the advice of the Mossad, and it failed in its aim to kill the entire Hamas leadership in Doha. And it is a bee in the bonnet of President Trump, who has both personal and national interests, not only in Qatar, but in the entire Persian Gulf. So this seems to have been what triggered Donald Trump's final eruption of impatience. And his announcement yesterday that he was taking Hamas's statement as a yes and moving ahead appears very much to have been coordinated ahead of time with Qatar and with Egypt, who immediately put out positive announcements. That said, neither Hamas nor Israel are among the top stakeholders in the negotiation as it has been underway thus far. So it is easy on the one hand to imagine that this momentum now can't be stopped, and that if Hamas, for example, tries to withdraw its statement about releasing all the Israeli hostages, that Qatar could simply threaten this Hamas leadership with annihilation in the only place in the world right now where they are safe. Similarly, if Netanyahu tries to take back his very public acceptance of this deal, Donald Trump could cut off weapon sales to Israel. So both are right now in a bit of a corner waiting for Donald Trump's decision.
All right, Nova, thank you very much, Nova DrPaulCottrell, reporting from Jerusalem for more. Let's bring in Scott Lucas, Professor.
Okay, we're going to switch to Fox News here. But here, once again, here's more proof that the plan isn't fully accepted. And not only that, it's not fully accepted by either side, the Israelis or Hamas. So what's Trump's, is Trump jumping the gun here? Or is it that he's trying to force a peace, an agreement between Hamas and Israel? But if he is, this is going to be a false peace. And if the 20-point plan isn't going to be accepted fully, then this is just kicking the can down the road. And I'm very concerned about next year. Next year, starting in September of next year, is a very dangerous time period for the whole world. Then you add in, further conflict in Ukraine, maybe a flare up in Taiwan. I'm not so sure that the United States is prepared for this. the citizenry nor the military. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. For this fall and winter, it's really important that you get the magnesium and zinc. This is going to boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Like I've been saying, since the 2020 crisis, early onset of dementia for individuals that are 40 years of age or older will increase. Out of 10 people that you know that fit in that age range, within the next 5 years, 30% of them will end up starting to get early onset of dementia. You better start protecting your brain now. A great way to do it is to take magnesium. So this fall, protect your brain function and your immune system by taking magnesium and zinc. And clarity factor. Clarity factor is a great neurostack. And by taking a neurostack, you're going to get rid of this brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate on tasks. And over time, you're going to build neuroplasticity. You're going to build those dendritic connections where your neurons are talking to each other more readily. You're going to increase these neurotransmitters. You're going to be thinking faster. You're going to be recalling memory quicker. Super important to take. So to increase your neuroplasticity and to get rid of that brain fog, take the clarity factor. This stacks well with other neurostacks like the magnesium and zinc, C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, resveratrol. These are all real important. So please go to my store, get the clarity factor and get the magnesium and zinc. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Really important to prepare for this fall and winter and to take these neural stacks to improve your brain function. Super important.
So the story that we are getting information on right now is potentially a big one. Hamas has reportedly agreed, and we really want to make sure that that this is where they are right now, because we know that Hamas has gone back and forth on this 20-point deal and whether or not they would agree to it all. But there is indications that they are offering to release the remaining hostages, dead and alive, and this is coming from Reuters this afternoon. Now, President Trump gave the group until Sunday evening to accept his Gaza peace plan. We don't know if they have agreed to all of these elements, though. So we need to just sort of tread carefully here as we wait to see exactly what they have agreed to. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and National Review Institute fellow Douglas Murray, who joins us by phone. Douglas, good to have you with us. As I said, we're just getting the early indications on this. What are your thoughts at this point?
My first thoughts are that it needs to be treated with considerable caution. Hamas know they have 2 more days, of course, and they are world experts at dragging things out. It seems from what the reports that have come through so far, they've said that they're willing to negotiate about these matters, but it is certainly a cause for optimism that the release of all of the remaining hostages is first and foremost.
I want to interject here for a second. All right, so the main points of it's a 20-point plan, but the main points: war will immediately end. All hostages alive and deceased will be returned within 72 hours. That's a problem because they can't get all the dead bodies. They have to dig it up, and they may not be able to get them all within the 72 hours. Israel released 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans. Hamas members could be given amnesty. Hamas will not have any role in the governance of Gaza. That's going to be a potential sticking point. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. That's a potential sticking point on the Israeli side. Gaza will be governed by a temporary transition government. Okay. It seems as though the Hamas agrees to that, but they are also stating that the Palestinians need to approve that. They don't have the authority to approve that particular function. The Board of Peace, chaired by President Trump and others, including former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, I'm not so sure that Hamas or the Palestinians will agree to that. possible path to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. That's never going to happen on the Israeli side. So this thing is going to be a false peace. And this is the point that I keep on making. Just because there's going to be a ceasefire and there's going to be some sort of swapping of prisoners doesn't mean that we're not out of the danger zone starting 2026 in September. 2026 in September, all the way through 2027 in October is dangerous for the world. It's dangerous. And this is setting it up to prove my point.
Was mentioned. There are two main issues that the Israeli government has said they wanted from the start of this war. They wanted the return of all hostages and for Hamas to cease running the Gaza. If Hamas are indeed open to both of those things, there will be lots of negotiations still to come, but this could well mean the end of the war.
Nope. It's,
All right,
it's only going to make it worse.
Douglas, I just want to bring you into what we're learning now, and that is exactly what I mentioned and exactly what Douglas is mentioning, which is that Hamas is trying to negotiate this deal, right? They have until Sunday night. The latest that we're seeing is that they have agreed to some parts of it, but not other parts of this agreement. And let's put back up on the screen the 20 points to this agreement, because obviously there are issues that they're going to have with some of this. And, you know, Douglas, this outline of this plan calls for them to basically give up all their weapons and leave leadership in Gaza. Do you think that they will agree to that?
I think in some ways that will be the hardest bit to get them over the line on. But there are reassurances in the Trump peace plan that there could be, for instance, an amnesty for Hamas terrorists who put down their arms and wish to leave. Obviously, there'll be a lot of.
I don't think they're concerned about. I don't think Hamas cares about the amnesty. They want the statehood, and not only that, they want beyond the statehood. They want a larger piece of Israel. And Israel, on the other side, wants more of the West Bank and of Gaza. So both sides are going to statehood. Two-state solution is dead. It's done. It's not going to come back. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's going to be what will probably happen here is that there will be some sort of agreement to some of the 20-point plan. There will be exchange of the hostages. There will be a false peace. And then what will happen is there will be further conflict that takes place. Some sort of additional ramping. Now think about it. What did I say about Trump? Trump always chickens out. He doesn't go the whole way. You think he was going to do anything if Hamas didn't approve? No, he was just going to tell Netanyahu that, you know what, just keep the war going. And that's what Netanyahu wants to do. It's no skin off of Trump's back by doing that. Now, let's look at this in a mosaic. Russia is being more belligerent, especially in the airspace of NATO countries. We're probably going to have to work with the Ukrainians to actually hit manufacturing facilities within Russia to try to help Ukraine gain the land back. So that's we're further digging into in the Ukrainian war, not retreating from it. President Xi may be making his move on Taiwan, and we are not ready for that. And then you had this false peace. Something happens. We didn't knock out the Ayatollah in Iran, and Iran's funding Hezbollah and Hamas. Trump didn't knock out the Ayatollah. Just imagine if he knocked out the Ayatollah and we're here and there's a potential partial plan agreement for peace. It'd be a little bit more manageable. But because the Ayatollah is still alive, still funding, it's going to be kicking the can down the road. There'll be more rockets that are launched, more attacks, and then the Israelis are going to have to go back in. So this is a false peace. It's a false peace because Trump wasn't willing to go all in. He should have killed the Ayatollah. Now, people would say, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You know, how are you going to have peace in the region? Well, you still have the funding mechanism still alive and kicking in Iran. Iran's already showing signs of reconstituting their nuclear weapon program. Through satellite imagery, we see that they're doing construction sites just outside of the nuclear facilities that were blown up. So what's going on here? They're reconstituting. Trump chickened out and didn't kill or have the Israelis kill the Ayatollah, and we were hours away from doing that. Hours. Didn't do it because Trump was chicken. And now Trump is afraid to really engage in the region, and so he's going to take a false peace. He's going to take a partial peace and then claim it as a win. And you can see in how this will metastasize down the road. Iran will still be able to fund Hamas, and Hamas will be able to do attacks on Israel. Now, the internal politics of Israel is that you have the ultra liberals that want to, push for a two-state solution, and then you have the conservatives that do not. So you have infighting within Israel. This is not a good thing, and this is why I'm saying 2025 and into 2026 for the first 3 quarters isn't the danger zone. The danger zone is the 4th quarter of 2026 and the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd quarter of 2027. And everything seems to be moving in that direction because we were expedient. We have a president that it chickens out on everything and wants to be expedient. This is going to blow up. This peace is not going to, unless Hamas accepts the 20-point plan and Israel accepts the 20-point plan, which I don't see either side doing. They'll accept maybe 50% of it, maybe 75% of it, but not the whole thing. Not the whole thing. And if it's not the whole thing, there is a high probability of this metastasizing in that danger zone after September of 2026. And that's the problem.
Hamas's side about that. But the peace plan is a very comprehensive plan that all sides, apart from Hamas, have accepted. And I think that they must, at the moment, be feeling the pressure, not least of their Arab allies, who have already signed on to this plan, saying to them, you are the only thing now keeping the war going. Hamas is the only entity that is keeping the war going. If everybody else in the region, including Israel, has agreed to these plans, why are Hamas still refusing to do so? And the pressure on them in the region, and indeed from their backers, I think at this moment will be considerable. But it's certainly a cause for some optimism that they seem to realize that this time the deadline of Sunday is a real deadline.
Well, they have seen how President Trump deals with these real deadlines in the past, certainly in Iran.
And then
giving them 60 to 90 days.
We just finished Yom Kippur. And the time period between Yom Kippur and Sukkot is pretty powerful, and through Sukkot. And remember, it was 2 years ago, it was the last day of the Sukkot holiday, Simchas Torah, where they did the attack on October 7th of 2023. So this is a very powerful religious time period right now between Yom Kippur through Simchas Torah. There's an energy that's building up. If this doesn't take hold in the 20-point plan, and it's a false piece, this is gonna get much, much worse. It's gonna be amplified. The violence will be amplified in 2026.
To end their nuclear weapons program, that opportunity was not taken, and we saw what happened with the B-2 bombers in Iran, and I think Hamas has gotten the message, but whether or not.
My gut feeling is that there'll be hubris with Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah. They'll attack. Something's going to happen in the West Bank, and Israel's going to do the same thing in the West Bank to what they did in Gaza. Now, just imagine that. Just imagine. Just think a year from now, Israel's starting leveling the West Bank. And that means that the annexing of the East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. That's what that means. And these red heifers, you know, have they been ritually slaughtered or not? Who knows? Something bad's going to happen if there's not a true peace that emerges from this.
We have all said, caution is the word to keep in mind here as we look at the early reports from Reuters that Hamas has accepted some of the elements of this plan.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe. To
Hey, Sean Hannity.
YouTube page.
I don't really
That's our
care.
honest interview.
Hey, Sean Hannity, I don't really care. All right, let's listen to Bloomberg's take on this special coverage. But before I do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Zeolite's really important to use every day to detoxify your body. It's going to help you to remove heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. It'll attach to them and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, take it every day, and detoxify your body. Super important. Another great way to detoxify your body is to take the heirloom barley. This will detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. When you're detoxifying your body regularly with the heirloom barley or with the zeolite or both, you can stack them together. You're improving your immune system, your endocrine system, improving your brain function, helping with your kidneys, your liver, your bladder. These are all super important, all right? I'm bringing down inflammation is going to help with your joint health too. And bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level regularly will help to protect your neurons. And like I said, you have to start protecting your neurons because of the aftershock of 2020. So please take my advice. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the heirloom barley, get the zeolite, take them together, detoxify your body, and bring down inflammation every day. Use discount 5. It's all caps, discount 5. And you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer and boost up that immune system. You're going to need that. You're going to need a boosted immune system for the fall and the winter season. Super important.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is a breaking news update from Bloomberg. Instant reaction and analysis from our 3,000 journalists and analysts around the world.
Hamas said it has agreed to parts, at least, of President Trump's peace plan, and it agrees to release all of the Israeli hostages. President Trump responding in a statement, saying in part that Israel must immediately stop bombing Gaza, but that believes Hamas is ready for peace.
I want to thank the countries that helped me put this together: Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so many others. So many people fought so hard. This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down and concrete.
Joining us now with his perspective, Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York. He is, of course, ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, as well a member of the House Financial Services Committee. It's great to have you back with us, Congressman. How should we be viewing this moment Donald Trump got the hostages released. Does he deserve vindication for the way he's handled this conflict?
Well, I think that his 20-point proposal I agreed with, as well as the regional partners. And so therefore that is a good thing. I came out in support of it. This is diplomacy. This is the way that I think that we ultimately will solve the what's happening in the Middle East and to have some real and true peace. Now, I've been a big proponent, for example, of the Abraham Accords, and that too was started by Donald Trump in his first administration. Again, it's important, significant, and we've got to give diplomacy an opportunity to work. And just what you just reported is important also. Israel should not continue bombing Gaza. I agree with the president on that. Let's try to see if we can get this thing done, that the negotiations continue in that regard, at least the clarification of what the 20 points is. And let's try to make sure we can finally change the situation in the Middle East where you can have a Palestinian state side by side with a Jewish state of Israel.
Well, of course, I don't need to tell you, Congressman, that both parties here have a record of not making good on the ceasefire agreements, on any agreements for that matter. That goes for both Hamas and Benjamin Netanyahu. As the ranking member of Foreign Affairs, how much time will you give this before it has credibility?
Well, I think that diplomacy needs more time than just a Sunday, that's for sure. I would think that, a week, a couple of weeks should be able to hash this thing out. And I think that with the aid of Gulf countries and other countries that also have signed off on the 20-point plan, along with the United States and Israel, we should be able to get it done. I think that we're getting close. We're getting very, very close. But of course, the devil is always in the details, that these details be discussed and rationed out, because you don't want a situation where there's been a misinterpretation of what should or should not happen, and then everything goes kaput and we're back to where we started from. So let's dot every I and cross every T that we can.
Benjamin Netanyahu has been seen as a pariah by many in the region because of the high number of civilian casualties that we've seen among Palestinians living in Gaza. If this is real, Congressman, and this is in fact the path to peace, did we just prove that you must meet strength with greater strength?
But no, I think that what we're doing now is we are using diplomacy. Ultimately, we know that just bombing your way out of this will not create a peaceful situation in the Middle East. So diplomacy has always been something that I've advocated. And what we've not been able to do to this point was to get an agreement on both sides. Diplomacy is always much harder and takes generally longer than just simply bombing or the military strikes. So we're at that point now, I think. And hopefully we can get across the tracks with an agreement that will make a substantial difference in the Middle East, where we can bring some true peace. And what's important to understand, as you can do, really important, is that all of the Gulf countries, and along with the Pakistanis, are all involved in this. Our allies in Europe all agree with the 20-point plan. So we're at a point where, you're talking about hostages being released and humanitarian aid getting in. This is what we want. And then trying to stabilize the region, rebuilding Gaza for the Palestinians without Hamas being in control of anything. So this is a very good but hard work. And I think there's still hard work to be done. But that's the way diplomacy works.
Well, it's good to have you, Congressman. Come see us when you get back into town. Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York. First reaction there from the House Foreign Affairs Committee on this breaking news on Hamas. Joining us now with details live here on Capitol Hill, Bloomberg's Eric Martin, who was just in Israel with the Secretary of State Marco Rubio only days ago. Eric, who deserves the credit for this?
Joe, this is a historic day, potentially, what we're seeing here. Here we sit on October 3rd, 2025, almost 2 years to the day since the Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel. And seeing this message from Hamas in response to the president's 20-point plan. And in particular, what caught my eye is the president calling on Israel to stop the bombing now. As you mentioned, I was just a couple of weeks ago in Jerusalem with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I asked both of them about this long-planned Israeli offensive to go into Gaza City. Even as we were leaving for Doha, they were encircling Gaza City and planning for this increased escalation of the war. Very controversial in Israel. A lot of people concerned about this, and both of them telling me that if they could find a way to get the hostages out, to get Hamas to give up the hostages without escalating the war, that was of course preferred. And so this is really a monumental moment that we're seeing here in terms of the potential for peace here. Still details to be worked out, but this initial response from President Trump, I think, is quite important.
Hamas is talking about accepting this deal with conditions. I know that we have some to learn still as to what those conditions are, but should we assume that Hamas actually knows where all of the hostages are? Will they be able to produce them?
That certainly is an open question, and I think there is a degree of skepticism towards the Hamas response in that some of the things included in the 20-point plan, such as Hamas disarming and giving up control of Gaza. We've seen as part of their response saying that Gaza would be led by a group of technocrats, and that seeming to indicate that they're willing to give up this control of Gaza, which they've maintained for nearly 20 years. But of course, from the Israeli side, one of the fundamental things, and Prime Minister Netanyahu told me this in a press conference there, was to make sure that Hamas can never return in the way they did on October 7th. And for Israel, that means to make sure that Hamas cannot be a threat, does not have the weaponry to pose a threat to Israel in the way that they did, and to ever repeat anything approaching October 7th.
Glad you could come see us, Eric. Thank you so much. Bloomberg's Eric Martin with us live on Capitol Hill, joining us now with her analysis. Wendy Sherman, the former Deputy Secretary of State in the Biden administration, now senior fellow at Harvard's Belfer Center. Wendy, I'm really glad you could be part of our conversation. I'm wondering what you need to see to know this is real.
Well, look, I agree with what Eric just said. This is a positive response from the White House. They're taking even a yes, but for an answer, and getting diplomacy underway. As Congressman Meek said in your previous segment, diplomacy is hard work. It all comes down to the details. So yes, this is a positive moment, but a heck of a lot more work to be done here. And we don't know the answer to a number of questions, including whether really Hamas can produce all the hostages and bodies of those who are deceased within 72 hours. But I do agree with Eric that the president's saying that Israel must stop its bombing now to create the space and the quiet to get those hostages back is a very positive statement in a very difficult situation. A long way to go, but better than where we were yesterday.
What do you make of the timing here, Wendy? The president posted on Truth Social another threat today, gave him a deadline, 6 p.m. Sunday, or all hell, as he has said, will break loose. Gaza already is all hell. Did that threat unlock this acceptance?
I don't know that the threat alone unlocked the acceptance, and I would say it's a yes but acceptance. It's not a total yes acceptance yet. But I think that Egypt, Qatar, probably United Arab Emirates, even Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, those who have signed on to this proposal have applied pressure to Hamas as well, Qatar being quite important to that. And as we all know, the president just gave Qatar, which is a key negotiator here, what amounts to an Article 5 security guarantee from the United States. Now, I don't know if that will hold up, because usually those things are done by treaty, not by executive action. But nonetheless, the president clearly wants to build a strong relationship with Qatar. And I will say one other thing. This probably, if it keeps going forward, puts the president in a slightly stronger position going into the APEC meeting at the end of October in the Republic of Korea in his negotiations with China. and how he's seen in the rest of the world. If he really can be the driving force to bring peace, not only to Gaza and the horrific conditions that the people in Gaza have been attempting to live under, some starving to death, desperately needing to get in. There is a lot of work to be done here, but as I said, we're in a better place today than we were yesterday.
Well, assuming this is real, Wendy, and we project to rebuilding Gaza, this could also be extremely complicated. I know the president has talked about making this the Riviera of the Middle East or something, but how do you rebuild Gaza without removing significant portions of the population?
I think the Riviera concept is a long way off. Gaza has been destroyed. The president has suggested that, and Israel has suggested that people move out of Gaza City, but they don't have fuel to do so. They don't have homes to go to. They don't have a way to move. They're worried about their children and their health. There is little health care left. Doctors Without Borders has left because it was such a dangerous situation. So what is critical here is to get aid in and to begin the rebuilding. And to go back to part of your previous discussion, we don't know whether Hamas will agree to the governmental structure that the president has agreed to. We don't know if they will disarm. So there are lots of details here yet to go. I know the president of the United States is desperate for a Nobel Peace Prize. I don't think he's going to get one in 2025. That will get announced October 10th. All of the nominations are closed, but maybe he's trying to get to 2026.
We'll see how that goes. I know it's something that he's been talking about quite a bit lately. What would this mean then for the future of a Palestinian state? And what would it mean for Iran, obviously pulling the strings for Hamas?
Two very good questions. I think for peace in the Middle East, clearly both the Abraham Accords and the further work that's been done is trying to bring the whole region together. Obviously, the fall of Assad was an important piece of that puzzle, sort of degrading Hezbollah and Hamas and the Syrian militia supported by Iran, critical to being able to move forward towards peace, but an enormous amount of work to go on. And it looks like the president is sort of pulling back as sanctions, including the new sanctions at the UN that have just been imposed on Iran, put pressure on Iran in hopes that Iran will do what it needs to do. I think it's a little bit of a risk here, however, probably more than a little bit, because Iran is moving forward to reconstitute its nuclear positions, reconstitute its facilities. Even Israel has said that the huge amount of enriched uranium is probably still there. They have advanced centrifuges to increase the likelihood of getting all that they need for a nuclear weapon. And even if they haven't decided to go there yet, what I call hardliners, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Quds Force, is probably pressing to make that decision to go for a nuclear weapon. So I hope there's some back channel discussions going on with Iran, because we cannot really get to peace in the Middle East unless we can also deal with Iran.
What would this mean for Iran's other proxies, like those in Yemen, for instance, who've been attacking ships on behalf of what's happening, or in protest, maybe a better way to put it, of what has been happening in Gaza?
No, without a doubt, what they're doing in Yemen, still giving some support to Hezbollah, clearly still engaged in some ways, probably with Hamas, and still trying to see what else they can do in the Middle East. So your point is well taken, Joe. This is an issue that really shouldn't be sidelined. The administration should continue, as I said, even if it's through quiet back channels, to make sure that people don't take their attention away from getting what is necessary here in order to make sure that peace can be longstanding, if it can be achieved with ending the war in Gaza.
Just lastly, Wendy, how does this end? If the deal is real, is there a signing ceremony, and who shows up for Hamas?
Well, I don't know that there's a signing ceremony. I think that Qatar has really been the country that houses Hamas. Whether Hamas's leader would sign a document, I don't see that happening. But I do see a collective action in the Middle East if, in fact, all these details can be worked out. As I said, this is a good day, but there's still a lot of detailed work ahead. And I hope all of that detailed work, as the president seemed to indicate, is truly going on, because without it, there are a lot of pieces of the 20-point proposal that Hamas did not address, and we need those answers.
A hopeful Wendy Sherman, senior fellow at Harvard's Belfer Center, former deputy secretary of state in the Biden administration. Wendy, it's great to have you with this breaking news. Thanks for your insights.
All right, this is live now from last night, but before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Be prepared for the fall and the winter. Get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. This is 30 parts per million. This is 35 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds, swallow it. What this will do is improve the health of the oral cavity and the oral pharynx. That's the back of your throat. Maintain the mucosal barrier, help to improve the health of the epithelial cells. That's super important to boost up your immune system. This is very important to take for the fall and the winter season, especially this fall and winter season, because it's going to be problematic. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35 or the Cleanse.
New York 811 presents Big Risks, Big Finds. The best excavators know the risks and how to avoid them. They contact New York 8.
We are going to switch gears, head overseas to the Middle East. The other big story of the day is Gaza, specifically Hamas officially responding to President Trump's 20-point plan to end the war in Gaza, cease the fighting in the enclave, and bring the hostages home. It's something that we've been discussing often with Dr. Alon Burstein. Alon has guided us through much of the 2 years of this war. And I gotta say, Alon, a lot of major developments today. This might be one of the more sizable news days we've seen since this war began. I'm gonna start with this tweet from Axios's Barak Ravid. He says, at the directive of the political excellence, the IDF will shift to defensive operations only in the Gaza Strip, and then will halt the operation to occupy Gaza City. That's according to a senior Israeli official. Is this the initial signs that something big is actually progressing here?
It's good to see you, Austin. I mean, there's so many signs with regards to what happened today. It's, as you said, one of the biggest and most charged days within the deal-making attempts of the war. I'm not saying within the war, because the truth is the deal has not been reached yet. Sides have talked about the deal. They've talked about the possibility of a deal. They signaled their will.
I think I was in a Zoom call with this guy. It was last year. I think he was presenting, he was presenting a lecture, and I was in the Zoom call. But
the deal, everyone's reading slightly differently what the other side has said. If you look at the actual wording of each side's response, none of them are actually accepting Trump's deal wholeheartedly, but they're all saying we're willing to talk about it. So it's not, I'm not yet saying this is the biggest day of the war because we're at the point where the war is ending. What I will say is that in terms of the attempts to bring the sides together and say there's a framework to work with, and the sides are actually showing some willingness, whether compelled into that willingness or for other reasons, this is the closest we've gotten to the sides being willing to talk about an end to the war, even though each one is framing what's happening actually through their own different sides. And this issue with the IDF stopping the offensive operations to take over Gaza City and moving to more defensive operations is one of the big stories of how this has played out. Because how this has played out is not the sides moving closer together to compromise. This has played out as a result of Trump basically signaling to both sides, I have had it. Signaling to Israel, we spoke about this the other day, about his meeting with Netanyahu, and signaling, I've had it with the war and I've had it the way things are going, and I want you to move forward with this deal now. And using Qatar, Turkey, and other countries to signal to Hamas, I've had it. This is no longer, we can keep playing around. So both sides, rather than moving closer together in their positions, have all come together based on what Trump said. And why did the IDF now why did the political echelon order the IDF to stop its attacks in Gaza right now? Because Trump said so. It's not because the sides are already making their deals. Because Trump specifically said Israel has to stop the bombing in Gaza. Lo and behold, that's probably what's happening.
We are seeing blasts live on air. Just happened right now. So if there are any blasts, and by the way, we should make something clear, just because Axios is saying that the IDF is signaling a move to a defensive operation, that doesn't mean that that's begun quite yet. What we could still be seeing are offensive actions.
No, I will say that the Israeli military itself put out an announcement saying that they have been ordered to take precautions and to prepare for implementing Trump's deal. Not exactly the words of Axios, not exactly saying it's halting all of its offensive abilities, but there clearly was an order, and the IDF has made this public. And again, this is because it's speaking to Trump. Trump said Israel has to stop the bombing in Gaza. What did you know? 2 hours later, the Israeli military is putting out an announcement saying that it has been ordered to not take any action that may endanger the implementation of Trump's plan. What that means, I mean, yeah, you and I are seeing right now, there's still probably active fighting there. But what that means is that fighting is, I would estimate, more likely something to do with holding lines, right? This typically, unfortunately, we've seen in many wars, particularly in the Middle East, as we draw closer to a ceasefire, each side also wants to have one final crowning achievement. So maybe we'll see a Hamas attempt to infiltrate an IDF outpost, or maybe an IDF attempt to arrest some high-ranking figure. But the major offensives,
Gusto is the best choice for small business payroll. It's fast. It's trusted. It's a great value. And when it comes to running your business,
major offensives, the taking out buildings, detonating entire areas, that we're probably not going to see, at least until there's another development. Not saying it's over, but at least until there's another development.
You and I were talking earlier today offline, and you made a point that I think is important to bring up on TV. There's a certain amount of prerequisites that would have to happen before we even see hostages taken to safety. There was an initial response from
We are beginning with Brighteon.
Some people were confused with how it was worded. There was some speculation at first as to, is Hamas agreeing to release the hostages immediately? And again, it was because some of the phrasing in it was a little bit confusing. Can you lay out the absolute soonest possible time that we could see something like that happen? There's a lot of mechanics that go into something like this.
So I'll say two things. I'll say what are the built-in holdups that there are in Trump's plan, because Trump's plan was not a fully fleshed out program for what should happen. It was a framework. It was a framework that both sides, again, are saying publicly we agree to, but each side is emphasizing a different part of what they agree to. They agree to what is important to them, not what's important to the other side. So first, I'll relate a little bit to the built-in problems that still need to be worked out in Trump's plan, and then it's okay, if we have time, I'll talk a little bit about Hamas's response and what was glaring to me in that response. When it comes to what's built into Trump's plan, the framework idea, again, we're seeing blasts still going on in Gaza, so, despite the messages of the IDF, clearly fighting is still happening there. In Trump's plan, there's a framework that says hostages will be released within 72 hours. It doesn't exactly say since when that clock started. It says in the deal, since the moment that Israel publicly agrees to this deal, That doesn't make sense. Hamas has to agree to release the hostages, not Israel. Is that since Netanyahu agreed? That's not how you make deals. Deals are signed between negotiators. So first thing is unclear when the clock would start for those 72 hours. Point number one. Point number two, within that deal of releasing all the hostages, Trump's plan says 250 life-sentenced Palestinians in Israeli jails will be released, as well as 1,700 Palestinians have been arrested in the Gaza Strip since October 7th, including all women and children. That may sound accurate, it's actually quite vague. There are close to, we're seeing now light bombs going off in the areas of Gaza. That's what I fires flares. They're called colloquially light bombs into the sky.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and exclusive access to all things VIP. So you can super fan from your sofa. Try 1 month free.
And by the way, I'll say that the fact that those flares are going up might indicate that this is actually more ground fighting than not bombings, because usually like bombs are sent up when there's active ground fighting. When we say 250 life sentence Palestinians would be released, the question of who those Palestinians are is a critical question. Hamas has demanded that the top Palestinian prisoners, Marwan Barghouti, Ahmed Saadat, and others, be released. Israel has said they will release other life sentence prisoners, not them. This deal does not say who decides. Who decides which Palestinian prisoners are released? In what order? Are they all released at the same time as the hostages are released? Who gets to decide that? Saying 1,700 Gazans arrested, including all women and children. Does that mean all women and children and then making up to 1,700? These things may sound like technicalities. They are what can make or break a deal. So that is one of the first things that will have to be negotiated. Even if both sides, as I told you earlier today, even if both sides were to sit down today and say, I am willing to sign on those 20 points right now, it cannot be implemented in the next 72 hours. There still has to be negotiated who the prisoners would be and who gets to decide. And the second point, and this is one of the critical points, the redeployment lines. The map that the White House put out showed 3 different lines in the Gaza Strip. Those lines are not accurate. They're not military lines. They're not lines that take into account where the major cities are. They are broad lines showing the gradual withdrawal and redeployment of the IDF. When this happens, how does this happen? The plan is not clear. It says after the release of the hostages. Does that mean within a day? Does that mean within a month? Hamas doesn't trust Israel that they'll do anything if the hostages are released. Certainly Israel doesn't trust Hamas that it's not going to resume fighting the moment that it can. So all these things still have to be worked out in Trump's plan, even if we accept the plan as is. So that's point number one. The second point, though, that I think is important to also relate to is what was said in Hamas's message and what was not said, because the message is sort of accepted by Trump, and he has said Hamas appears to be ready for peace. I'd say that's a bit of an exaggeration when we look at the actual wording of what the group published. And I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but some of the critical points is they start from heaping praise on Arab, well, seeing a lot of blasts now. They start from heaping praise on Arab and Islamic leaders and also on President Trump himself for trying to end the war in Gaza. And then they do say, and I'm reading now, in this framework and in line of achieving complete ceasefire and a full withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, Hamas announces its approval of releasing all Israeli captives, living and remains, within the framework of exchange outlined in President Trump's proposal, provided that the necessary field conditions for the exchange are secured. That's an important wording. Hamas is saying they're going to do that so long as they can do this appropriately what they consider in the field. That may mean they demand the IDF withdrawal in advance. They have also announced they've lost contact with some of the captives, the guards are holding captives. They may say we don't know where they are, it may take time. Then the movement says that they also reaffirm their agreement to transfer the administration of the Gaza Strip to a Palestinian authority composed of independent technocrats based on national consensus. That is different than what it says in Trump's plan. Trump's plan does not say that authority is going to be handed over to a Palestinian authority. It says an international body is going to take over the Gaza Strip and eventually, after several years, be handed over to a Palestinian authority. Hamas does not agree to that.
Right.
And the third thing that they say, and with this I'll end, we're just quoting Hamas, the third thing that they say is that all other matters concerning the future of Gaza are tied to a unified national Palestinian stance. Basically, they're saying, we can't answer this ourselves, all Palestinians have to answer this. What they don't relate to at all is the question of disarming. Israel has said that they will not go forward with the deal unless it includes Hamas disarming, giving up its weapons. Hamas put out this message. Trump, I think, thinks from his end that he's going to bring both sides together and start the process, and hopefully they'll figure out that it's better to make peace, which is why he embraced this and looked at it from the perspective of, well, I guess Hamas is ready for peace, but they do not mention demilitarizing, they do not mention disarming. These are key aspects of Hamas's deal. I think that Israel is very surprised that Trump accepted this. Israel probably expected to reject this, saying Hamas has rejected this because they're not relating to Trump's deal. But Trump has accepted this, so now we're going to start negotiations, but we're not at the point where both sides have agreed yet.
How likely does it feel?
I
that
think
this
I think
leads
Trump.
to-
I feel that Trump jumped the gun on this. I think Trump is being way too optimistic about this peace agreement with Hamas. Now, why that is, it's possible that maybe he's trying to force the hand of Netanyahu. Maybe. But the end result is that this is going to be a false peace, and false peaces in that region will only lead to further conflict, more destruction, more death. See, if they solved this problem back in the 1970s, or even the 1980s, or the 1990s, or the early 2000s, or the 2010s, it would be less collateral damage, less death, less destruction, less costly. But every time you kick the can down the road, it becomes more collateral damage, more death, more costly. This is why I'm concerned about next year.
An end to the Gaza war.
So really what will matter is what is worked out in the coming days. Very likely what we're going to see now, especially since, I would say especially since Trump said stop bombing Gaza and the IDF said that they have, although what we're seeing on screen live indicates that that's not the case. But if that was the case, if we actually have Trump stepping in, and Trump has influence on Israel more than anyone else. He has influence on Arab countries also. They might have influence on Hamas, Qatar, Turkey, Jordan.
Could you please submit your expenses today?
You could keep reminding your coworkers to submit their expenses. Or let Rand do it.
Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates. But Trump can tell Israel do something, and Israel pretty much has to do it at this point. Israel's completely dependent on the United States for so many things. So if Trump says to Israel, stop the war until we're done negotiating, we're going to see the sides jumping into negotiations. What will matter is how tied are the phases one to the next. The deal is supposed to start with all the hostages being released and the idea of withdrawing. And you showed the map of Gaza before, that the withdrawal lines that have been depicted in Trump's plan. So the deal is supposed to start with the hostages being released and Palestinian prisoners being also released from Israeli jails, and then an idea of redeployment, and then as the deal progresses, moving between these lines, and the Israeli military is supposed to hand over the territory in Gaza gradually to an international Arab force that is going to gradually take control as an interim government, and etc. All these things are phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the big question that will determine if this is going to bring an end to the war or not is how tied are they to one another? What we saw in the deal, the first hostage deal of the end of 2023. And then we saw in the second hostage deal in January 2025. We also saw, those deals also were an end to the war, but each phase was independent. It was phase 1, and then they'll negotiate phase 2, and then phase 2, and then they'll negotiate the end to the war. There, what will matter is how tied are they to one another. Are hostages going to be released, and then the sides have to figure it out? Then probably not. We're probably not seeing the end of the war. Hostages will be released, maybe some of them, maybe all of them, and then we'll see a return to fighting. In turn, if the phases are interlocked with one another, hostages are released, but at the same time, the idea of withdrawal, and at the same time, the Arab force comes in, or something like that, then we're more likely to see things developing. It's all going to be determined seemingly in the next coming days of negotiation.
That was my next question. How long until we have clarity on these things? As we go into the weekend,
You're not gonna
as
have
we go
clarity.
into the early portion of next week, what are going to be the telltale signs for what direction this thing is headed?
So one of the first things that's going to be is who goes to the negotiations? Where are the negotiations held? Are they held in Qatar, that same area where the Hamas leadership had gathered to talk about Trump's previous plan, and on September 9th, Israel tried to assassinate them? Or are they held somewhere else? Maybe they're held in Turkey, maybe they're held in a European country. That will matter. That will show how much of how differently the sides are possibly looking at the current frame. Even though if it's held in Qatar, what matters who is sent to the negotiations. In the previous administration, under the Biden administration, we could always tell when the head of the CIA was sent to the negotiations, that meant that it was now the big guns are coming in. Similarly this time, if Steve Witkoff himself travels to Qatar or wherever the negotiations are, and if Israel sends the head of the Mossad, the actual top negotiators who can make the deals, not the technocrats who are negotiating, but the top people who can actually have authority to sign off on a deal, that is going to indicate how seriously things are possibly have the potential to progress. That is really going to be the make it or break it. It's also important to note that this is something that seemingly gone by the wayside with all that's happened in the last months. But since September 9th, since that assassination attempt, very few of the Hamas leadership that reside externally have been seen in public. We know that they all survived. We know this because Israel itself has admitted this, and Qatar said so, and Hamas has said so, and the United States has said so. So seemingly all the agencies believe that they survived. But we don't know if maybe one or two of them were injured. We don't know exactly who is going to be possibly running the negotiations. It used to be Khalil al-Hayya. Now it may be someone else. Maybe he was injured and maybe someone else. So it's hard to know exactly with the configuration of the Hamas leadership what's going to happen. But in terms of who the United States sends and who Israel sends are going to be big telltales as to where this is going, what direction. And last thing I'll say, there is still a split leadership. Even though right now, technically, all of the Hamas leadership resides abroad, the leader of the Al-Qassam brigades in Gaza, Izzadin Haddad, is actually the one who would have to agree. He's actually the one who would have to agree to lay down arms, stop fighting. I hypothesized today when I was asked at different forums, why didn't Hamas wait to the disarming? I said, I think there's a disagreement. I think Izzadin Haddad does not want to disarm, and the external leadership may say, okay. And so they just decided, let's just not talk about it. Let's not bring it up now. But that is also going to be a big question, not only who goes to the external negotiations, what happens inside Hamas? Because the Hamas external leadership can agree to a lot of things. And you and I talked about this throughout the last 2 years. The Hamas external leadership can agree to a lot of things. If the internal leadership of the Al-Qassam brigades do not go along with it, that agreement is not worth much. That's also going to be something we have to be looking at.
Is this the closest we've been to a ceasefire in almost 2 years?
Yes.
Yes.
It's ironic to say that, by the way, as there's live blasts on television.
I know, it's a little bit bizarre to be talking about like this. I'd say that this is the closest that we've been to the possibility of a long-term ceasefire. We have been closer to a hostage deal. We have been in situations where the sides already agreed on the how many Palestinians will be released and which ones, and already agreed on the mechanisms. This was in July of 2024. We came extremely close then, and then at first Hamas didn't answer when Israel agreed in May, and then Israel didn't answer when Hamas agreed in July. So, and then we're the closest we ever were to a hostage deal, to a framework that may actually pave the way towards the war being declared over. And again, it probably won't be declared over by Hamas or Israel. Both sides will say we're standing guard and will continue in the future. But being declared over by at least the United States, this is probably the closest we've been. But like I said, it's very important to be emphasizing. Israel announced this evening after Hamas's response, we are preparing to implement the first stage of the deal and the release of the hostages. That is not the end of the war. That is just one aspect of the deal. Hamas is saying that they're willing to talk about the release of hostages and a possible Palestinian technocratic government. That's not the end of the war either. That's not Hamas disarming. That's not actually stopping the fighting. So both sides are telling Trump, please understand that we do agree with you and don't be mad at us. But the next sentences that both sides are saying in terms of what they're agreeing to, they're not talking to each other yet. They're both talking to Trump and saying, we like this side of the deal, like that side of the deal. It's the closest we've been to a framework. But again, I'll say at this point, this framework is being imposed on the sides. It's not them coming to terms with each other. That's probably what will have to happen for the war to end. It'll have to be imposed on both sides. But equally, that's why I'm still a little bit hesitant, because it's not like, look, the sides are realizing that they're this close, they may as well come together. This is very now, both sides are saying yes, pretty much because they're being compelled to do so.
Alone bursting with some critical context tonight on this busy news day coming out of Gaza. We'll be tracking everything over the weekend as well. Alone is the host of the Israel-Palestine Report. You can give him a subscribe on YouTube. He does his own updates. He talks about the region. He talks about the Israeli-Palestine war, and he breaks things down with the same encyclopedic attention to detail as you saw tonight. He does that on every single one of these reports. Alone, great to see you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Let's also say people to stay tuned on October 7th. We are going to be doing some sort of segment. We are talking about possibly doing a live show, possibly doing a summary maybe of this deal. So people should stay tuned to that too.
It's not often that you...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do and boost up your immune system and your brain function, slow down the aging process. I want you to be healthy, all right? That's the only way we're gonna, if everyone does their part, you're gonna be more productive, you're gonna have less ailments, and our total expenditure in healthcare will go down if people approach a healthy lifestyle and stack supplementation properly to slow down the aging process and to boost up that immune system and be prepared for the fall and the winter season. Please go to my store and get the ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. This will soak up free radicals, help with the health of the mitochondria, boost up your energy levels, and support your neurons. Super important. NAD Plus supplement will boost up your NAD Plus levels, increase your energy, help to repair your DNA damage, and protect your neurons. Olive leaf extract helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and helps your lipid profile. Super important. And if you're 40 years of age or older, super important to take the vitamin B complex. This B complex is the first 4 B vitamins to help with your mitochondria. Your mitochondria has a process called the electron transport chain that boosts up your ATP levels. So the first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain. Vitamin B complex will rev up your cellular metabolism and protect your neurons through vitamin B12. Also, go to my store and get the dual-purpose deodorants. These have no aluminum, no baking soda in it. It has ingredients made from the Himalayas. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural. It's for males and females. You use it as a daily deodorant, and they'll help to detoxify your body. Super important. And by detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. You can get it in citrus. You can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Very high quality deodorants. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a few bars for your household and help support the work that I do and help support your health and wellness. All right, let's listen to DW.
News just coming in, Hamas says it has agreed to release all of the remaining Israeli hostages, whether dead or alive, under U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The militant group also says that it's willing to hand over the administration of the Gaza Strip to a Palestinian body of independent technocrats. Hamas says some elements of Trump's plan still require further negotiation, the group adding that it appreciates Arab, Islamic, and international efforts to bring about an agreement. You may remember the U.S. president had given Hamas until Sunday evening, 6 p.m. Washington time, to accept a deal or face an even greater military onslaught aimed at its destruction. Well, for more now, I want to pull in Fawaz Gerges. He's a professor of Middle East politics and international relations at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Fawaz, we just spoke a couple of hours ago wondering if this might happen, and now we've got Hamas saying yes to turn over all of the hostages. What do you make of this? Because we've been hearing now for 2 years that the hostages were the most important leverage that Hamas had in dealing with Israel.
Really makes no surprise. It's a conditional yes. Hamas has made it very clear in the past few months. It's willing to release all the hostages in return for the end of the war. What Hamas did today or just now is a very clever on the part of Hamas, because it has agreed to release all Israeli hostages, alive and dead, because this is a high priority for President Trump. But it has made it very clear there are other points that need further negotiations. What are we talking about? What are the points? It wants guarantees that Israel will pull out of Gaza permanently, as opposed to really occupying an area on the Israeli-Palestinian border. Because Israeli Prime Minister has made it very clear he will keep the Israeli army in many parts of Gaza, just yesterday. And Hamas also wants to make it clear that it won't lay down its arms, it won't surrender. So Hamas now is beginning a process of negotiations. It hopes to do so. And by saying, look, I'm willing to release all the hostages, it has preempted President Trump and also has preempted Benjamin Netanyahu before the Israeli families of the Israeli hostages. So this is the beginning of a process. I think it might take a few days, it might take a few weeks, but at least from Hamas' point of view, now the ball is in the Israeli court as opposed the burden is on Hamas.
And Fawaz, we're also getting reports that Hamas has said yes to relinquishing all control and authority over the Gaza Strip and turning that control, that administrative control, over to an independent body of technocrats. So that in itself is Hamas saying, we will give up control. And you're saying the condition is if we get a complete withdrawal from Israel.
You know, Grant, Hamas' position throughout in the past few months, 6 months, we want a comprehensive deal. We want to release all the hostages. We want Israel out of Gaza. We will not have any role in running Gaza. They want the Palestinian Authority or an Arab, group of managers and leaders. But the sticking point, Brent, is Hamas arms. Hamas has repeatedly said it will not lay down its arms. It will not surrender, because this could really mean the end or spell the end of Hamas' identity as an armed resistance movement. I think what we have seen today is that, here is I know this might come as a surprise to you. I don't think there is any change in Hamas' position. What Hamas has done is to really turn the table on its head and remind everyone that here are the priorities for Hamas. It's willing to agree to a comprehensive deal, release all the hostages in return for the end of the war, and Hamas will not have any political role in the management of Gaza, but it would like to keep its arms. The question is, will President Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu accept Hamas keeping its arms? I doubt it very much.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. If you're saying that this is putting the ball back in Netanyahu and Israel's court to basically agree to a complete withdrawal, you and I both know that inside the Netanyahu government, you have those factions that would let the government collapse if there was any agreement to that at this moment.
Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition will never agree to end the war in Gaza. In fact, they want absolute victory. They want total victory of Hamas. They want all the hostages back. They want to destroy Hamas. They want to disarm Hamas, and they want to keep a permanent military force in Gaza. So I think back to square one. What I'm trying to say to your viewers is that Hamas now has kicked the ball back into Israel's court. So you're going to see a great deal of talks and negotiations in the next few days. And I take it that the Qataris and Turkey and Egypt will do most of the talking to the Americans, and the Americans will be talking to Israel as well. But remember, the fact that Hamas has made it very clear it will release all Israeli hostages is a preemptive move against Benjamin Netanyahu. They want to show the American president that they are willing to send all the hostages back to their beloved families. But they want some points to be clarified regarding Israel's military presence or occupation of Gaza, and also the status of Hamas the morning after the end of the war.
Okay, but Fawaz, I want to flesh this out a little bit, because even now we talked about the importance of the hostages for Hamas, and we've heard time and time again that the hostages were the most important part of the leverage that Hamas had in dealing with Israel. By saying that they will return all of the hostages, isn't Hamas giving up the strongest weapon it has against Israel?
Stability, precision, that's the essence of driving lawfare.
At Replit, we believe everyone should be able to create software without limits and without knowing how to code. Introducing Agent.
Hamas knows that. This is the only strategic card that Hamas has. But now, remember, Hamas is facing a moment of reckoning, an existential moment. Hamas' back is to the wall. The pressure is overwhelming, not just by the Americans and the Israeli, massive, brutal war, but even by Turkey and Qatar and Egypt. And Hamas wants a comprehensive deal. What Hamas wants in return for releasing all the hostages is an ironclad commitment that Benjamin Netanyahu will end his war in Gaza. Hamas will not get Benjamin Netanyahu basically commitment to end the war, so we're back to square one. But Hamas is buying time, is trying to really have a wiggle room out of this particular strategic stratagem in which the Trump administration and Benjamin Netanyahu has really put Hamas in the past few weeks.
Let me ask you this, though. By Hamas agreeing to turn over all of the hostages, though, isn't Hamas also winning favor in the eyes of President Trump, which in turn will allow President Trump to put more pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to pull out and end the war? Isn't this a move that will gain points in the White House for Hamas?
That's why Hamas said we will release all the Israeli hostages alive and dead. Because Hamas wants to really basically send a message to the American president. They are genuine about really releasing all the hostages. They want a comprehensive settlement. They want an end to the war. But I don't think Trump will go for this, because already Benjamin Netanyahu has made it very clear to President Trump. He has been able to really, influence President Trump's final ceasefire plan. So at the end of the day, I think we're back to square one.
Well, what about the amnesty?
In return for the end of the war, Benjamin Netanyahu will never end his war, will never basically pull out of Gaza. He wants a buffer zone permanently in Gaza.
Okay. All right, I want to ask you this before we run out of time. What about the part of the plan that offered amnesty to Hamas militants who lay down their arms? Do you think that in the eyes of Hamas that is still a goal that is worthy of agreeing to surrender the weapons?
Hamas, it's a non-starter for Hamas. Any kind of decision, any kind to basically lay down their arms and surrender and go to exile will basically spell the end of the identity of Hamas. Since its establishment in the 1980s, Hamas has prided itself on being the vanguard of armed resistance against Israeli military occupation. Think of how much loss and suffering Hamas has basically taken in the past 2 years, not to mention the 60 thousand Palestinians, victims, and the entire Gaza Strip is being destroyed. For what? For Hamas to surrender and go and be humiliated and go to exile? I doubt it very much.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems to me, I think what we are seeing today is another round, another moment, another turning point. I don't think we're going to see an end to the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza and the loss and the suffering of the Palestinian people, and also the suffering of the Israeli hostages who have been in Gaza for the past 2 years.
Yeah, and we will certainly be watching too to see how the Trump White House reacts to this and to see if that deadline for Sunday evening, if that deadline is still valid following this announcement. Time will tell. Fawaz, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming on because it is getting late. We appreciate your insights tonight on this breaking news story. Hamas saying that it will give up all of the Israeli hostages. That is part of the Trump peace plan for Gaza. Fawaz, thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges. I have elderberry zinc in stock. You get 21 in each bag. Very important to mitigate any throat irritation during the fall and the winter season. I also have drops, which are a little bit smaller than the lozenges. You get 100 in each bag. You can get it in blueberry, in honey and lemon, and also in cherry flavor. Get a few bags for your household. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. But the moment you have that throat irritation during the fall and the winter season, take them right away to mitigate the problem. Super important. Be prepared for this fall and winter season. As you know, the wastewater information that's coming out and the number of cases that are starting to pop up in the United States, you need to be prepared. Also, take C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, and an 8-ounce configuration. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and also in avocado oil. C60 is a 60 carbon molecule. It is 1,000 times more potent than 1 molecule of vitamin C. And it'll soak up free radicals. It's going to help to boost up your immune system, help with your endocrine system, help reduce plaque formation at the vascular level, and also boost up your energy and help with your brain function. Super important. How does it work? It soaks up free radicals, neutralizes them. And by neutralizing them, there's less stress in the cell, less stress in the tissue, so your tissues will perform better. Your mitochondria will be healthier. You'll have more ATP because your mitochondria is healthier. Your electron transport chain will work more efficiently, and you'll have more energy, more ATP. This is super important for your cells, especially your neurons. When you have more energy for your neurons and less stress in the neurons will produce those neurotransmitters and communicate better, and you'll have better neuroplasticity over time. Super important. At the vascular level, soaking up free radicals will reduce plaque formation because you're reducing the chances of having oxidized LDL. So you get lots of benefits from this. You'll start to notice the benefits of this within 2 months, 2.5 months. Over 1 year, you're going to physically see a slowing down of the aging process. Now, how does that work in terms of the exterior, helping you to slow down the aging process in the exterior? Well, if you have less stress and you're soaking up free radicals over a year time period, your body can heal and it has less oxidation, less free radical stress, and the body is slowing down its aging process. If you notice people that are older, as the free radicals build up, they age faster. If you are chronically sick, you age faster. Well, if you can reduce some of that inflammation from that sickness, reduce the sickness, neutralize it, and soak up the free radicals that are generated from the sickness, then what will happen is you're actually slowing down the aging process. In addition, C60 will help the basal layer to improve the health of your skin cells. Your skin sheds and creates new skin cells. Well, that's at the basal layer. Your adult stem cells for the skin are at the basal layer. So if you improve the basal layer, the cells at the basal layer, with C60 and resveratrol, you're going to actually improve your skin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the 2 ounce, the 4 ounce, or the 8 ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil, but very high quality, anti-aging. C60, super important to take every day. I've been taking it since 2016. It's part of a anti-aging protocol that I have. The first part of the protocol is a foundation. You take the multivitamin and a probiotic. The first pillar after that foundation, taking the Max 35 or cleanse to boost up the immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans to boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system and your brain function. And the fourth pillar is Boomer Boost to boost up those energy levels and rev up your metabolism. When you do that on a regular basis, you're going to actually slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Let's go to Times Radio, and their a former ambassador is giving their take on this potential peace agreement.
For one country that can influence Israel. Merz from Germany and Starmer from the UK and Macron from France have tried. And they are doing their best, I believe. But it's Trump who can call the shots.
Donald Trump says Hamas has accepted parts of his 20-point ceasefire plan for Gaza and is ready to begin negotiations immediately. Now, as part of the deal, Hamas has signaled its readiness to release all remaining Israeli hostages. So is it possible that Trump's plan could bring about lasting peace? Sir Vincent Feen is the former British Consul General in Jerusalem and the de facto ambassador to the occupied Palestinian territories from 2010 to 2014 and joins us now. Sir Vincent, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Are you feeling optimistic, Sir Vincent, today?
It's an opportunity. It's a rare chance, Alexis, to stop this 2-year nightmare and save lives. The lives of the 20 hostages who are still with us, thank God, and thousands of Palestinians who are enduring genocide. I described it as through indiscriminate bombardment and deliberate starvation. It's the immediate crisis, Alexis, but there is more to it than that. It's half the story, if you like. In the other half of Palestine, the West Bank, there is currently apartheid through settlement expansion and rampant settler violence. But I come back to my first point. Right now, there is an opportunity, and we should give some credit to President Trump for creating it.
So Vincent, critics may say, look, we've been here before. We had a ceasefire and an exchange of hostages, albeit not the release of all hostages. Is there a danger that this could all stall in the first phase yet again?
There are many risks.
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix. Now, this whole flow is a conversation, so your words actually build your website. I'm going for a store, and after a free-flowing conversation, I get this detailed site read. And just like that, my first draft is ready. Now, that's dope. Next, you can really get in there and style it your way. Here's the fun part. You can regenerate this whole thing over and over, or you can tweak something specific, like your layout. Let me describe what I had in mind. Yeah, that's fire. If there was ever a time to speak life into your dreams, it's right now using the Wix AI website builder.
Treat yourself to big savings on top-rated pieces during Rainboard's Flanagan's anniversary sale.
There are many risks. Back in March, as you recall, there was a ceasefire for about 6 weeks from January to March. Then, sadly, Israel broke that ceasefire and kept going south, if you like, in Gaza. So the future is uncertain. There are differences between the Trump plan and Mr. Netanyahu himself. For instance, the Trump plan talks about the option of Palestinian statehood, which, as soon as the press conference was over, Netanyahu went out and said he would never let that happen. Last month, there was a UN conference led by France and the UK about two states. And in my opinion, that two-state outcome, which was endorsed and strengthened by UK, French, Australian, Canadian recognition of the Palestinian state, is the future, but it needs to be reconciled with the elements of the Trump plan that can be reconciled with it.
So far, Hamas have not agreed to play no further part in Gaza's governance. Is this going to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks in your point of view?
Well, Hamas is not the Palestinian people, and there are many Palestinians who seek peace and mutual security with Israel, which has not been forthcoming throughout the occupation, which has now been declared unlawful by the International Court of Justice, the 1967 occupation. I think what's needed is Palestinian agency, Palestinian technocrats, if you like, running both the West Bank and Gaza, the two parts of Palestine that Britain recognized as one. And I believe that Hamas can be sidelined, certainly militarily and certainly governmentally, by people of goodwill who believe that the future lies in peaceful coexistence between Palestine and Israel, with that key element of mutual security and respect for the rule of law.
So Vincent, many are looking at what the next move is going to be. Some have said that actually the ball now is in Netanyahu's court. What do you expect from the Israeli Prime Minister? He's in a tough position. He's got a lot of opposition within Israel. We've seen and covered the protests that seem to be certainly every week, but almost on a daily basis, asking for the return of the hostages. That's now on the table. What can Netanyahu do next?
I think it's quite hard for him to wriggle out of this, to be honest with you. President Trump is the one person, the one country that can influence Israel. Merz from Germany and Starmer from the UK and Macron from France have tried, and they are doing their best, I believe. But it's Trump who can call the shots. Now, he did stop the second Israeli attack on Iran. He ordered Netanyahu, effectively, to stop the jets from flying, and they turned back. I think he has that power to make a difference. And as you said, the hostage families, about 50 of them, and those who were families of those who were released earlier, back in February, March, are pressing very hard for this to be a real outcome, to be the end of this genocide. I hope that's what comes about. And I think that the Israeli military also want this to stop. They're exhausted, and they know that they cannot eliminate the idea of Hamas by eliminating people. So there is pressure from both from within the Israeli government and from without. And the opposition parties, the oppositions to Netanyahu, are all saying, we will back you in parliament if you go down this road.
So Vincent, thank you so much for giving us your time. Good to speak to you. So Vincent Fian is the former British Consul General in Jerusalem, de facto ambassador to the occupied Palestinian territories from 2010 to 2014.
Since the beginning of the year, like I said, we've seen numerous attempts and truces. The fact that we had a January ceasefire agreement, one that was very detailed, actually looked in stages that relied on Trump pressuring Netanyahu to actually agree to that deal. But then ultimately, when the Israelis decided that they felt that they would rather actually go back to war than to actually see the ceasefire agreement go through, and that the Trump administration fell in line, was a major point of concern. And in the end, also, we know that in the ceasefire talks themselves, despite progress on the table, whenever Netanyahu wanted to change things, Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, would again get in line with what Netanyahu ended up deciding. And so there was either very inept mediation or quite bad faith mediation, and that the ceasefire talks ended up becoming part of the war strategy rather than a means to end it. And so I think Trump really has his work cut out in the sense that he needs to prove to everybody in the region, not just to Hamas, to the Israelis, but also to the Arab states, that he is ready to apply that necessary pressure. If he is seriously invested in the plan that he announced on Monday and asserts it more as his own plan, even though it's of course one that's constructed by multiple actors, if he wants to show that investment, then he needs to be serious about backing it up. And I think that if this initiative fails, for all its faults, at least in focusing on the ceasefire terms, and then leaving the day after questions for later, as long as he's open to that and is willing to pull the muscle behind it, then I think we can actually see the US playing that constructive role to at least provide a better path than we've had up until now, which has only been more and more cover for Israel's assault on Gaza and even the potential expulsion of Gazans. So I think Hamas has actually made rather a smart move by saying yes and or yes but. In that kind of approach, they basically help to kind of throw the ball back into the court of Netanyahu, but also the Arab states, in the sense that Hamas is actually saying we actually agree to specifically the ceasefire component, where they talk about the release of the hostages, and then using that essentially and disaggregating that from the other sort of quote unquote day after questions, which were the much more serious and severe aspects of this plan. So by actually delinking the ceasefire from the day after, Hamas has both been able to reserve certain strategic issues that were important, not just for Hamas, but for Palestinians, but also to signal to Trump and to the Arab states that we are open to negotiating based on this framework, and that we will go point by point on the provisions, but that we are ready to engage in good faith on these questions. And this I think helps to avert the concern that by dismissing it outright, that would basically allow Israel to have the green light to go in an even more aggressive assault than it is already happening right now. What's different about the Trump-Netanyahu version is that it excludes the PA entirely. In many ways, it envisions it as part of this sort of Blair Institute affiliated organization with multiple representatives, with very few Palestinians on that, or let alone Palestinians who decided on the political terms of the main parties. So the structure of this and the idea of this is actually not new. And I think here is actually where Hamas is trying to say that we are open to negotiating on this front, and is again putting the ball back onto the Arab League's court to saying, if you welcome this plan and want to engage with this, let's try to tilt it back to at least what the framework even in the Arab League reconstruction plan provided. So I think there's actually a good space of middle ground. But the main divergence here is how far they can actually succeed in pushing back against what is essentially an Israeli-led campaign to exclude any real Palestinian agency or governance or self-determination over Gaza. And so I think the Arab states are actually very pivotal in this question of mediation. Like up until now, we basically had the Netanyahu government very much steer Washington, D.C. into its direction in the ceasefire talks, in questions about Gaza's day after. And the hope was that the Arab states, particularly the Gulf, would try to be a bit more of a counterweight to that. And in some ways, there have been a lot of dynamics that have shifted towards that. Arab states themselves have tried to assert themselves more clearly towards Trump, primarily for their own interests, and that what was initially regional considerations, primarily vis-a-vis Iran, is actually now more and more shifted towards the question of Israel-Palestine, and that the Gaza war was always very dominant, but the fact that the Israel-Iran war really shook up the Gulf states, and the fact that just a few weeks ago, Israel even struck Hamas offices in Doha, in Qatar, which is a major US ally, has, I think, really shaken the Gulf states to realize or to feel that Israel is potentially just as much as a strategic risk as Iran on the other side. And so I think that has helped actually build some more movement and activity, or at least some nominal unity among Gulf and Arab states to build on this. And this is where we see this kind of increased pressure on Hamas to try to accede to these terms under Trump. But I think also that they'll play a really crucial role in trying to keep tilting Trump away from Netanyahu, and to tell the president that the Israelis are really guiding the U.S. down a path which is not constructive for the region, that is really against the wishes of the Arab positions.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this stack as the foundation to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. That foundation for the anti-aging protocol is take the complete multivitamin. The complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. They're cofactors for enzymatic activity. Very important. It's easy to digest. By taking this, your enzymes are going to perform better and your cells will perform better. Your tissues and your organ systems will perform better. So please go to my store, get the complete multivitamin. And I also have probiotics. You can get it in the veggie cap version or in the powdered version. I prefer the powdered version because I take a lot of different powders in my lunch, like the collagen and the gladiator barley and the boomer boost and the lignans, and so it's just easier for me. But some people prefer the veggie cap version. Both are very high quality, and you're going to improve your gut biome by taking them every day. Drink filtered water. Your immune system in your gut will improve. Your mucosal lining will thicken. Your concentrations of IgA, which is a type of antibody, will increase to help with your immune system. Your food absorption will be better. Your metabolism will increase. You'll have a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. You'll sleep better. You'll get rid of that brain fog. You'll have better consolidation of memory. You'll be detoxifying your central nervous system and improving your brain function. You'll be well rested because you have better sleep. And an added benefit is that your skin will improve. So please go to my store and get the probiotic and stack it with the complete multivitamin. That's the foundation for improving your health and slowing down the aging process. Another great supplement that you can stack this with is the gladiator barley. The gladiator barley will help to build muscle. It's a high density protein that will also help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This is not your typical protein powder. This is super nutrient heirloom barley. Do resistance training. Take this with soft foods or with filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day. And you get the added benefit of gaining muscle, but you're bringing down inflammation. That helps your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, helps you to recover from a workout, helps with your joint health. Does a lot of benefits for your body by bringing down inflammation, and it detoxifies your body. And that also helps with your immune system, your endocrine system, and your brain function. Super important. And soaks up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This stacks well with C60. So if you soak up free radicals in different ways, then you are slowing down the aging process more efficiently. So please go to my store and get the gladiator barley. Now you can take it separately or stack it with the different supplements. And a great supplement to stack it with is the Boomer Boost. The Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website. This will target multiple systems. It's going to help with your heart and your vascular system, your brain function, your musculature, rev up your metabolism and your energy levels. And over time, you're going to notice that you are slowing down the aging process. You're going to have, within 72 hours, you're going to notice that you have a steady burn of energy and you'll have more vitality. You're going to be moving around more. You're going to be more active. You're going to be able to get rid of that brain fog. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to have better recall over time. You're going to improve that neuroplasticity. You're going to think faster. And when you're sleeping properly, you're slowing down the aging process. It's important to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep a night. So you're slowing down the aging process and improving your brain function and detoxifying the central nervous system. This is very powerful stuff you should be taking every day. This is the reason why it's the 4th pillar of my anti-aging protocol. So please go to my store and stack it with the gladiator barley, and you're controlling your A1C levels. By adding muscle and taking the proper supplementation and having a balanced diet, regular exercise, mindfulness, proper sleep, some spirituality in your life, learning new things, these are all aspects of slowing down the aging process and improving your vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley. This is a powerful stack. do some resistance training, and you're going to notice that you're getting healthier. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. We're going to go to News Nation talking about Hamas agrees to release all Israeli hostages.
As that coverage continues on News Nation now, I'm Kyle on Shane Healy in New York. You see there has been a lot already going on this Friday. And now we add to that, the breaking news has been covering in the last few minutes, Hamas responding and saying it's prepared to accept some of the key terms in President Trump's peace plan for Gaza, including potentially releasing the hostages. All right, this is developing as we speak. We've got News Nation's Robert Sherman all over it. He's live in Tel Aviv, and we bring in at this time each day News Nation correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera with his take on things as well. Robert, stand by. I will get you back here on details in a moment. But Geraldo, this just broke. Robert was telling us about it as it came on. Your reaction from what you've heard so far from Hamas's response?
I love it. You know, I'm always very skeptical of any announcements of progress in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza. But this is the real give to me, it seems. Hamas ready to release all the hostages. That is the first time I have ever heard them suggest something so sweeping. Yes, there are the caveats that some may be held by the other Islamo-fascist groups there. But having said that, I love this. This is the first most positive pronouncement I have heard. They want to continue existing. Okay, they are allowed under the 20-point peace plan, as far as I can recall, to stay in Gaza if they care to or flee. I like this, Colin. I think this is the best news we've heard in quite a while.
The reason, Robert, I went to Geraldo first there is I wanted to see what he was going to say because he has so much experience in this area, the Middle East, and he often reminds me to be cautious, right? As he said, often very, very skeptical. So I was curious what he would say, and he's, sounds optimistic. You wonder now what's next in all of this, because to Geraldo's point, there's a lot of firsts in here. First time we've heard this kind of talk out of Hamas.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, there are a lot of firsts in this situation here. I would say that we had been getting rumblings up to this point that this was likely the trajectory that we were headed to. If you listen to what Egypt's foreign minister had to say about all this, he described there as being holes in the arrangement here, particularly when it came to the security issues and guarantees for Hamas and what their future would look like. Because remember, I mean, in this proposal here, Hamas members can either leave Gaza outright or they could stay and accept amnesty if they agree to coexistence with Israel. And then there's the day after effect of all of this with governance as well, which, from the position of mediators, is there in principle, but not necessarily ironed out line by line as to what that should be looking like. So some of these mediators that you've heard from have acknowledged that there are going to be a few loops that need to be closed on all of this. Suppose that the bottom line is that Hamas has given a rather positive answer here and has given indication that they're prepared to part ways with what is really their only bargaining chip, which are the 48 hostages that are still inside of Gaza. But they want the assurances on the other side of that there's no situation in which the war could be restarted. Because remember, Israel has Gaza City practically surrounded, and the president even said today that he has the finger next to the green light to give to the Israelis if Hamas gives an unsatisfactory answer. So, I mean, that is the level of the precipice that we are approaching here as this answer, this hedged answer, comes out from Hamas.
So what is the Trump peace plan? On the tableau I have it. Let's put it on the screen for a moment so we know what they were being presented with, the components of the Gaza peace plan from President Trump. Let's put that up. So the Israel releasing the Palestinian prisoners, the 1,700 detainees, okay? And then this is the key point we've been talking about here, and we have this basically from Hamas today, the releasing of these hostages, which they say they're open to, members being granted amnesty if they demonstrate peace efforts with Israel's withdrawal. That's interesting, Robert. You want to maybe weigh in on that before we go back to Geraldo being gradual from Gaza, Palestinian committee overseen by an international body also, and the recognition of a pathway towards Palestinian statehood. Those two, the committee being overseen by an international body. So post war Gaza. What about that for Hamas, Robert? And also the withdrawal. You talked about how they have Gaza City surrounded, and the gradual withdrawal could be maybe an issue here as well, or not?
Yeah, I mean, the gradual withdrawal of IDF troops, I mean, that is another place in which you have seen so far some conflicting opinions within the Israeli government as to exactly how entrenched inside of the Gaza Strip they should be, if there should be a long-term presence or there should be a buffer zone. I mean, there are disagreements about that within the war cabinet as to what that should look like. And conversely, there are disagreements about that from Hamas as well as to exactly what role IDF troops will play, where they will be here. So, I mean, that is certainly an area for negotiation that Hamas has been looking at. To what extent will the IDF be pulling back here, and the timeline of all of that? There was a proposal that was put out by the president for the staggered withdrawal of IDF troops there. And then you bring up, the big picture in all of this here, Cottrell. I mean, you talk about the day after and the focus on trying to push towards, so-called brighter horizon between the Palestinian and the Israeli people. I mean, there's an even bigger big picture at play here, is that this is viewed as the first step in order to try and get broader peace deals throughout the region and recognition of statehood of Israel here. But it all begins here at getting this across the finish line. There's a lot of big plans for the region here the next few months and years. This deal has to get closed in its entirety first.
Stand by, Geraldo. I want to ask you about this from the president's point of view as well. But first, to the White House, and let me bring Kelly Meyer in on the north lawn of the White House. I think you have the official statement from Hamas, Kelly. So let's go through that, and then anything else that you're hearing, if anything at all, from the Trump White House on this, and then we'll go back to Geraldo for his take.
Yeah, so we just ran back into the White House. There's less staff here today because of the shutdown, of course, but we were checking in, trying to find the White House press secretary, the communications director. They're all in a meeting right now. We're told it's exactly on this. It could be on a number of things, but we are waiting here from more from the White House on this. But we did just get in a statement. This is from Arab officials I'm speaking to right now, both saying that this has been, in their words, accepted, though there are things that still need to be worked out. The way they put it was accepted with negotiations to remain. And then there was this long statement from Hamas. It said, in part, after a thorough study, the movement made its decision and submitted the following response to the mediating brothers, as they said. They said that they're calling for the end to the war on the Gaza Strip, the exchange of prisoners, the immediate entry of aid, the rejection of the occupation of the Gaza Strip, and the displacement of our Palestinian people from it. So essentially, some of the things that they're talking about here, ready to release all Israeli captives, both living and dead, agreed to hand over the admin of Gaza to an independent body, and saying that the future of Gaza essentially will be addressed through the comprehensive Palestinian national framework. So a lot in that. We're still working through the statement, and also, again, trying to find out the response from the White House. But we are waiting to see, likely to hear from the president on True Social on this. Is a big moment. And obviously, we started the week here with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here in the state dining room. We were there as he and the president were revealing this Gaza peace plan. They didn't take any questions because they were waiting for what Hamas would say. Now we're hearing what Hamas is saying, and we're waiting to see where it goes from here, because it comes as the president just put out that truth earlier today on True Social, saying that their deadline was coming up on Sunday, 6 p.m. Otherwise, all hell would break loose. So this comes now. We're waiting to see what the White House may say.
Good. So this is, to Kelly's point, Geraldo, a big moment for President Trump.
If this succeeds, this is huge. And if the Nobel Peace Prize after this, then shame on Norway. But I have to say that what I would like to see is some overt sign from the IDF. I know it's not specifically in the 20-point plan. Just let the guns go silent now for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Just let's keep our fingers off the trigger, or keep our fingers on the trigger, but don't pull the trigger. Show some overt sign that the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu understands that Hamas is moving, that we're not renegotiating this deal, we're not giving them any sweeteners, but there's no reason now to have, to keep the military pressure on. I would like very much to see Bibi Netanyahu ease off, give this thing a little breathing room, couple of hours, maybe till, noon tomorrow, I don't know. Something, don't even make any announcements. Just know, just have your, get safe, be in good, defensive. Defensive positions. Let your tanks stop rolling, your cannons stop firing, your snipers stop shooting. I think that would be something.
No,
And then and as part of this, let GETTR and these other countries all say how happy they are. Let's encourage. It's like a hard birth here. Let's all get involved here. Yeah, that's it. I like what I'm hearing. Let's get this thing done. Just a little maybe off the delineated path, but a little enthusiasm for what could be a big historic break.
Could be very big. Yeah, a little encouragement from Geraldo never hurts. By the way, Robert, how active have things been? And you talked about Gaza City earlier, but even in Tel Aviv, have you seen rockets? I mean, to Geraldo's point now, hopefully we don't. But how active have things been here the last few days?
It's been rather quiet here in Tel Aviv the last couple of days. On the one hand, for the observance of Yom Kippur, and then right now it's actually Shabbat here. So, I mean, it's even questionable how many Israelis have even heard this news necessarily, because for many people here in this country, their phones are off and they won't see anything until tomorrow. So that's an interesting dynamic at play here. Something that Geraldo said that was really important here is, just the fragility of this whole situation. But keep in mind, Kelly was in the White House on Monday when the prime minister was here, and there was a pretty vocal point made, no questions, to either President Trump or Prime Minister Netanyahu, just because of how fragile this whole situation was. How often do you see that from the 47th president? So there is a lot that is at play here. It is a very fragile situation. People are certainly going to be waiting very anxiously to see what the next step is.
We saw it with Putin, we saw it with Netanyahu, and hopefully.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help to build muscle. If you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, you have a problem building muscle. The reason why is that your genes are methylated. So the proteins that you need to help to build a muscle aren't expressed as much as when we were younger. So you need to take supplementation to help. Myotrol has polyphenols, lignans, and flavonoids to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do resistance training, take this every day. Super important. This will also help if you are an athlete, younger and older. Even if you're younger than 40 years of age. If you use this as part of your stack to improve your strength and your sport performance, you're going to notice benefits. And you're going to be able to recover from your workouts quicker. So please go to my store and get the Myotrol. Do the resistance training, reduce the atrophy, build that muscle. It's a very powerful supplement that you should be taking every day. Lignans helps with your endocrine system and your immune system, soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. Super important, especially during the fall and the winter season. Another important supplement to take for this fall and winter season, but you should be taking this every day to boost up your immune system, is to take the ashwagandha root. This will help to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. Vitamin D3, it's a gene expression cofactor. It helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected, and it helps to soak up free radicals. And guess what? It also helps to reduce the severity of what's coming in the fall. Nattokinase breaks up clots and helps with your lipid profile, helps with your cardiovascular health, super important. And guess what? There are going to be more people having clotting issues in the fall and the winter. You're going to need to take nattokinase. Vitamin K2, dual purpose. It's going to help to soak up calcium. It helps to pull out and reduce calcium depositing for your cardiovascular system. So this is going to help with your cardiovascular system. If you do resistance training with the D3, take in calcium, you're going to help to increase your bone density. And this stack is very powerful to reduce the severity of what's coming in the fall and winter. Take the stack. It's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Be prepared for the fall and the winter and boost up that immune system. Super important. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. And lastly, let's play another video here.
What seems to be the problem, Sonia?
The bed is full of Greeks. Innovation changes.
As that covered.
And joining us now is Hal Kemper, retired Marine Intelligence Officer and host of the Strat podcast. Always good to see you, Hal. Thanks for being here today. First, I got to ask you, what you make of these new developments this week.
Well, Laura, I'm cautiously optimistic to a certain extent. I will say one thing. President Trump did something that President Trump hasn't done, President Biden didn't do. He dictated terms to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He said, hey, stop the firing or stop the bombing now. And interestingly enough, that's exactly what happened. The IDF did stop the offensive operations. They went to a defensive mode. I thought that was interesting. That was a big change in the relationship, and there's a lot that underlies what the U.S. would have done if Netanyahu hadn't agreed to that. So that's very interesting. Now, there's a lot of things that still have to be negotiated. The governance structure, obviously, Hamas does not like the fact that they're going to be blocked out of that. So there's some resistance to that plan. They're talking for some Palestinian technocratic thing. They don't like the idea of disarmament. They did kind of get the Palestinian Islamic Jihad on board with Hamas last night, so that was positive. But there's still a lot of details that have to be worked out.
Hamas agreeing to parts of Trump's plan, peace plan, as we've been talking about, but they say more negotiations are needed. So I know you know the subject very well. What are the next steps that are needed here?
Well, the next steps you're going to have to figure out is what exactly is this governance structure? What will that look like? And then the big one, and this is going to be huge. In fact, I don't even know if Hamas can get its own forces, its own fighters, if you will, to agree to this, is to lay down their arms. There is a lot of resistance within the movement. There are some significant doubts that at the rank and file level, at the small unit level, that they will actually agree to do that. And then when you have not just Hamas, but PIJ and other groups that are there, that may just fall apart. That may not work, and that of course is a major component. So that's got to be worked out as well. And then what happens to all the Hamas members? They talk about amnesty or giving them passage to another country or something like that. There's a lot that has to be worked out there. Hamas is concerned. They're basically in an existential negotiation. When it's done, there may not be a Hamas like there has been a Hamas, and they don't know what that Hamas would look like.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to believe that Tuesday also marks 2 years since the deadly October 7th attacks. 2 years. More than 1,000 people were killed, as we know, that day, with around 250 taken hostage. We all can remember that video. There's nearly 50 hostages who remain captive, about 20 believed to still be alive. And the brother-in-law of a hostage taken on October 7th spoke to News Nation's Colin McShane. I wanted to play some of this for you.
I want to be very cautious with Hamas' response. I think it's too early to be enthusiastic about it, because we've heard before there are yes, but responses, and this feels more of that.
All right, so is it too early to have hope at this point? Do you see Hamas backing out?
I actually think that's a very, very smart way to look at it. You don't want to get too optimistic. You don't want to get your hopes up too high. On the other hand, this is probably the closest I've ever seen in the last 2 years to a real ceasefire, or I should say peace type of agreement. I don't want to get too broad in how I think this thing is going to work out, but I think there's a possibility of getting the hostages out. There's a possibility of maybe developing a good day after plan. I think, though, that getting Hamas out of being a fighting organization, a terrorist organization, that's going to be very difficult. And I'm not quite sure. I could see this getting part way and then things kind of breaking down. But if they get the hostages out before it breaks down, that would be a very positive step.
Yeah, we're all praying for that. All right, retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kemper, great to have you on the program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below. And
like I have been saying, a false peace is only going to make it worse. I've been saying this for 2 years. In 2026, in September, it's actually September 11th of 2026, the whole world is in danger. The whole world is in danger. What we are doing right now to 2026 of September 11th, well, if we pick the wrong path, the world is in danger. If we pick the right path, we diffuse the danger. Now, why do I say this? The shofar will not be blown during Rosh Hashanah of 2026. And there will be a curse that will come down on this earth if this is a false peace. And because of Trump not killing the Ayatollah when we could have, when we did the bombings on the nuclear facilities, we are actually going to make the problem in the Middle East worse. If this is a true peace, which I don't think it is, then we are not in danger. There is more than an 80% chance that this is a false peace that will lead to further conflict and be a tumultuous conflict for the whole world in 2026. And you couple that with what Trump didn't do with Iran, if you couple it with what's going on with Putin, when you couple it with what's going on with President Xi in Taiwan, the economic turmoil that's going on with the UK and in France, the political turmoil and financial turmoil that's taking place in the United States. You have to remember in 2026, that's also midterm elections. There's going to be civil unrest and political unrest, economic unrest. These are all coming to the fore. If this is a false peace, then the poor decisions that have been made in the last 2 years by the international community will bring the whole world into a world war. Now let's play Al Jazeera before I end this broadcast.
Throughout the city.
The US government shutdown has been extended into next week after Senate Democrats and Republicans failed to pass competing bills to fund the government on Friday. Democrats have refused to support the House-passed bill unless Republicans reverse recent cuts to Medicaid. The deadlock means hundreds of thousands of federal employees will be suspended or discharged, while others will receive no pay for the duration of the shutdown. President Trump says the shutdown will give Republicans a chance to purge Democrats from the civil service through layoffs. Well, let's speak to Paulo von Schirach about this. He's president of the Global Policy Institute and is joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your time. This is now, the fourth failed attempt to pass spending proposals in the Senate, extending this shutdown into another week. Is this merely a reflection of deep partisan division, or is there something more structural at play within the Senate and party leadership dynamics?
Well, look, it is the opportunity that the Democrats, I guess, were missing until now to make their voice heard. As we know, the Democrats are the minority party. Well, the president is Republican. The House has a slim but workable Republican majority, and so does the Senate. The Senate, 100 members, 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats. Now, to pass a spending law, there's, according to the rules of the Senate, you need a qualified majority, which means 60 votes, which the Republicans don't have. And this is how the Democrats can make their weight have some value. The deal is we want medical subsidies for millions of Americans that would expire, according to current law at the end of this year, reinstated. This is really a big deal. Medical insurance in the United States is extremely expensive. To the point that if these subsidies are not reinstated, medical insurance becomes essentially unaffordable. So the Democrats think they have a winning card.
Right.
They are going to be out there to support the common people.
Right.
And the Republicans are treated as the enemy.
Okay, let me ask you about that. You say that the Democrats feel that they're out there to support the common people. Given that both parties are holding firm, Democrats on healthcare subsidies, as you said, and Medicaid, and Republicans accusing the Democrats of prioritizing undocumented immigrants, who is right now more vulnerable to public backlash if the shutdown drags on? Who will bear the brunt of economic fallout politically, the party in power, the Republicans, or the party that's pushing for policy concessions?
Well, it all depends how clever the Democratic and Republican operatives that are messaging are and who gets more resonance in the country. The Republicans, they say, look at these Democrats, they've shut down the government. This is a disgrace. They're politicizing something that is really essential. 750,000 civil servants are out of a job. People don't get necessary services. This is all the Democrats' fault. And the Democrats say, no, we're here because we stand by the common folks who need, affordable medical insurance. The question is, how long is this go on for? We don't really know. But I guess the calculus among both Democrats and Republicans is, let's look at focus groups, let's look at polls. Are we winning on this or are we not? Chances are that the Republicans will acknowledge at some point that depriving Americans of affordable medical insurance is not a winning card.
Right.
But so that's just a guess.
What do you see, Paolo, as the short-term and long-term consequences if this drags on? I mean, how could this prolonged shutdown influence, for example, the 2026 midterm elections or even the presidential race narrative going forward?
Well, look, the Democrats desperately needed to show that they are alive and not a corpse lying there doing nothing, as this president and the Republican majority in Congress does pretty much whatever it wants, which is no surprise in a democracy. The majority rules. But the Democrats have appeared to be lifeless. And now they say, okay, now we have a chance to take a stand. Is this going to re-energize the base and to say, okay, we've got some good leadership in Washington. Go for it. Make yourself, heard. Let's fight the good fight. Is this going to work? Well, that's what the Democrats hope. It's not clear at this point if this drags on, which it very well may, who gets the bigger blame? The Democrats that shut down the government or the Republicans that are against, subsidies to medical insurance for millions and millions of Americans? It's really hard to say. Remember, this whole thing started on October 1st, which technically speaking is not an accidental date. That's the beginning of the fiscal year for the U.S. federal government, October 1st. And that's when the money couldn't be spent anymore without passing this law, which requires Democratic support because you need 60 votes to make sure that this passes. So if this drags on, are Americans going to be against the party that shut down the government and caused a lot of consternation, or against the Republicans who want to cut care subsidies to the people?
It'll be interesting to see how it gets resolved and when it gets resolved. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Paolo von Schirach in Washington, D.C. Now, people in flood-hit Pakistan are attempting to piece their lives back together. This year's monsoon.
I want to see if they have anything on the Israeli.
They get prepared there.
That's the
Stepping down after less.
Bitchute. Those are also in.
Many.
Analysis to President Trump's speech. Of course, we'll have President.
A lifetime which follows Jesse.
From Gaza are now at the epicenter of this crisis, treating the wounded and sheltering the displaced
with detail.
It speaks about the Iran struck powers might be the Kuwait fund to eradicate.
I'm Fully Batibo. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. The U.S. president says there is no room for delay in implementing his Gaza peace plan and urges Hamas to move quickly. But as hopes grow for a lasting ceasefire, Gaza's humanitarian situation remains catastrophic, with Israel continuing to block food, fuel, water, and medical supplies. And from London to Rome, thousands of protesters in Europe defy police to rally against the genocide in Gaza. There is renewed hope in Gaza and around the world that 2 years of Israel's genocidal assault on the Strip can be brought to an end. And momentum is building, with Washington dispatching Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff for talks in Egypt on Sunday. US President Donald Trump has just posted to Truth Social, insisting there be no delay in implementing a ceasefire in Gaza. In the post, he says, "I appreciate that Israel has temporarily stopped the bombing in order to give the hostage release and peace deal a chance to be implemented. Hamas," he says, "must move quickly or else all bets will be off. I will not tolerate delay, which many think will happen, or any outcome where Gaza poses a threat again. Let's get this done fast. Everyone will be treated fairly." Well, we have three correspondents covering the latest developments for us. Hamda Salhoud is following Israeli reaction in Jordan's capital, Amman. Hindar Khudari.
Now, again, we're recording this on October 4th, so it's Saturday. So a lot can happen between Saturday and through Sunday into the Monday morning rise and shine in New York City, right? But I think it's really important to narrow in and see the perspective of Al Jazeera on this. I personally think, DrPaulCottrell thinks, that this will be a false peace and that we are picking a path that will lead to a further conflict and the curse that is coming to the world in September of 2026. There is a confluence of different, seemingly disparate things in the world. They're all going to merge together, and this is this great curse that's coming.
Is in central Gaza with the latest on the situation there. But first, we go to Shihab Batanzi in Washington, D.C. Shihab, I want to ask you about President Trump's latest post first on Truth Social, in which he claims Israel has stopped its bombing of Gaza. But as we've heard, on the ground, this is not the case. Tell us more about what the president has been saying and the messaging from the White House.
It was just an hour ago, I think, Folly, that we were discussing this as to whether Donald Trump would be aware that Israel has not stopped the bombardment. Well, I think we have our answer now. I think it's really important to note that the narrative here this morning, in fact, largely shaped by journalists who are very influential in the US at shaping narratives about the Middle East, has been Israel has stopped the bombing, and clearly that's the narrative that Donald Trump has in the White House. So this is now so far so normal, I suppose, is the point. After the amazing announcement a day ago, last night here, Washington time, that Donald Trump was
moving into a new place, Carrot makes it easy to feel at home. When you clear a space, list it in seconds. Neighbors.
East with independent new eyes and being advised, he seems to be back now, slowly drifting back into the Israeli paradigm, the Israeli viewpoint. And the other key point here is this sentence then. I will not tolerate delay, which many think will happen, or any outcome where Gaza poses a threat again. This is exactly what we've been talking about, the fight back by those who are against negotiation, and they're already setting up their parameters now. That after the initial shock, where they were saying, well, clearly Trump is going to reject the deal, then they realized that he wasn't rejecting Hamas's offer, and then they pivoted to, all right, well, let's see if Hamas releases the captives in 72 hours. Hamas has made it clear that there are logistical difficulties. The mediators, I believe, have been making it clear to Donald Trump that those might be the difficulties. That's theoretically why Witkoff is going to Egypt to negotiate those terms. But this is already becoming the sort of the litmus test for those against negotiations. Have Hamas have Hamas release the captives, have they agreed to disarm? And that's going to be what they're constantly going to be in Donald Trump's ear about, saying, look, they're not doing it, they're not doing it, they're not doing it, they're leading you on, let us carry on with
Right.
those.
But in the meantime, I mean, Witkoff and Jared Kushner are heading to Egypt for those ceasefire talks. What are those discussions going to look like then?
Well, we don't know. I think it's very interesting that Jared Kushner is there. I mean, he's been very closely involved, certainly in the longer term planning for Gaza. So this would certainly seem to be, and all indications are in the White House, that they are very wedded to Kushner's vision of a new Gaza. So that's going to be interesting as those longer term negotiations continue. With Witkoff, this is what's going to be so interesting now with the negotiations, is whether Witkoff this time around will be acting on behalf of an independent White House, genuinely trying to bring this conflict to a close, an honest broker, or whether, as in the past, he will be saying one thing to Hamas and then something else to the world, and eventually just always somehow aligning with the Israeli position. So that's what we've got to look out for.
Shihab, thank you very much for that. That's Shihab Batanzi with the latest there from the White House. Now, as we've been reporting, despite President Trump's calls overnight for the bombing to stop immediately in Gaza, that hasn't happened. At least 41 people have been killed so far this Saturday. Israeli attacks are still taking place across the Strip. Palestinians are still hopeful, but remain cautious that a ceasefire is within reach.
I wish this really comes into effect. Not like every time we hear of a ceasefire, then it doesn't happen, and we live on false hope. We don't want false promises. This is enough. Our children are gone. Our life is gone. Our homes are gone. We want a real ceasefire.
Every day there are new proposals. Every day there is talk of a truce. We want practical implementation. We want a truce on the ground. We don't want mere talk in the media about a truce followed by the hell of Gaza.
We were pleased when we heard Hamas's response, but we are not happy because all of our loved ones have passed away. May this torrent of blood stop and we may return to our homes safely.
Let's bring in Hind al-Hudari now, who's in the wider central Gaza for us. Hind, as we heard their cautious optimism, but the bombings and attacks on Gaza have not stopped. You wonder then how the first stages of the plan, the peace plan, can be implemented under these conditions.
Well, we definitely did not see any change on the ground. The Israeli forces in the past hour targeted a house for Al-Abd al-Al family in Tufah in the Gaza city, where at least 17 Palestinians have been confirmed killed and transferred to the hospital. And according to the civil defense teams, there are at least 30 others still trapped under the rubble. So we're expecting that toll to increase. We're talking about dozens of others that have been injured, and the hospitals are unable to treat all of these Palestinians. What is happening on the ground is doesn't show that there is any type of ceasefire, because the Israeli troops are still stationed 500 meters away from Al-Rashid Road, where they killed and shot a couple of Palestinians who were trying to return from the south to the north earlier today. There was also an attack on Al-Mawasi, and this area is a safe zone claimed by the Israeli army. So we're seeing continuous airstrikes in different areas across the Gaza Strip, and we do not see any change on the ground. But again, Palestinians are a little bit hopeful that this time a ceasefire is going to make it an end. We're talking about desperate Palestinians, those who are on the move for the past 2 years. Most of them have been homeless, and especially the fact that people were forcibly displaced in the past month is actually making the Palestinians very desperate. We're talking about Palestinians not being able to find food, water, medicine, or any of their basic necessities. So Palestinians are waiting. They have been asking us every single hour, what's happening? Is there anything new? Is there an update? So Palestinians are thirsty to hear any positive and good news so they can start their lives again in peace without any bombardments.
Thank you very much, Hind, for the update there from central Gaza. Hind al-Hudari. Well, the Israeli military has responded to the developments, saying the chief of the general staff instructed to advance readiness for the implementation of the first phase of the Trump plan for the release of the hostages. The chief of staff noted that given the operational sensitivity, all troops must maintain high alertness and vigilance, in addition to reinforcing the need for a rapid response to neutralize any threat. Let's bring in Hamda Sahut now, who's in Amman, Jordan. She's there because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel and the occupied West Bank. We heard the response there from the army, Hamda, and we're also expecting now, I understand, to hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu very soon.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak in just under an hour at 8 p.m. local time after U.S. President Donald Trump says that he wants this done without delay. So there are still final details that need to be narrowed out in the deal. Hamas says they want to enter into negotiations to talk about the minutia of what exactly is in this deal, timelines that we can expect. But specifically also, we have to remember that there isn't really a name of Palestinian prisoners to be released from Israeli jails, more than 200 with longer life sentences set to be released, in addition to upwards of 2,000 Palestinians who were detained from the Gaza Strip during Israel's ground operation. So while there are a lot of moving parts here, the Israeli government also needs to meet on this. They need to vote on it. And it's worth mentioning that last night, Netanyahu held an emergency meeting and released a statement just around 3:20 a.m. local time, saying that he and his government are ready to implement the first phase of the deal, which is releasing the hostages.
And there have been mixed reactions, Hamda, from the relatives of the captives held in Gaza. While some are hopeful, one father has said U.S. President Donald Trump will need to keep up the pressure on Israel and Hamas to follow through.
Hamas said yes to negotiation. It didn't say yes to the plan. That means it's going to be negotiation. Of course, Trump took that as a yes, saying everything must end now, and finally forced Netanyahu to go to ceasefire. Netanyahu tried to run every trick possible. Even though he agreed to the plan, he still was working on a way to sabotage it. So now Trump actually put the brake, and there's a ceasefire right now for immediate negotiation for the first step, which is releasing the hostages. We're putting our trust in Trump because he's the only one who's doing it, who's the only one who has power to do it. And we want to see him with us until the last step.
The families, Hamda, putting their trust in President Trump. They're frustrated with Netanyahu. There are more protests expected in Israel this Saturday, as has been the case for the past 2 years, by the families of the captives. What is the general mood across the country?
There's certainly this sense of cautious optimism amongst the Israeli public and the family members of captives still held in Gaza. There is no confidence in their own leadership. They say that Benjamin Netanyahu and the coalition of right-wing lawmakers has failed them time and time again. So they appealed to the United States. They appealed to American President Donald Trump to try and get this deal done. And they feel that they're very close to the finish line, that for the first time in nearly 2 years, they're at the brink of a comprehensive deal, but they're just afraid of the coalition lawmakers like the national security minister and the finance minister. These are members of the far right who want the war to keep on going. So they're afraid of some sort of sabotage in the 11th hour by these ministers because, again, they do not have faith in them. Tonight, we can expect tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Israelis to take to the streets, rallying around this deal, trying to garner more and more public support for it, to send a message, not just to Israeli leadership, but to the Americans and the world, that they're tired of the war, and nearly 2 years later, it must end.
Hamda, thank you very much for that.
Let me give you some really deep advice in philosophy. All right? Israel it does not look like Israel actually performed the ritual slaughter of the red heifers. All right? But they have 2 or 3 that are ritually pure for the service. I do not know why they haven't done it. Now, some people say, well, they did it already. Well, according to the Para Duma, which was written by Maimonides, it has to be on Mount Olive. It wasn't done on Mount Olive. So perhaps they're concerned that the actual Cohen that's doing the slaughtering, their technique isn't perfect. If Israel lets these other 2 or 3 red heifers end up becoming impure for the ritual slaughter, then Israel has let go by the opportunity to have the ashes that hasn't been available for the last 2,000 years. No matter where you are in the spectrum of religiosity, either atheist, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever, super religious, not super religious, it doesn't matter. All right? You would have to come to the conclusion that this adds another data point to what I've been saying, that a big curse is coming. Israel did not do the ritual slaughter yet the red heifers were available during the COVID crisis. And they were allowed to slaughter it with I think it's within the first 3 years, 3 to 5 years. Now I think that there's some interpretation where it can be beyond the 5 years as long as there's only one non-red hair. But over time, these animals will end up, if not ritually slaughtered properly, they have to be properly ritually slaughtered. But if they're not ritually slaughtered properly, then there won't be the ashes. So there's going to be a curse on the Jewish people, especially the religious Jewish people, for not following the tenets of the Torah. Okay, that's one data point. You have the infighting that's taking place within Israel between the secular and the religious. You have the infighting between the Palestinians and the Israelis. You have the infighting between different international regimes. You have the United States that's not willing to accept a Palestinian state, but you have the UK, France, and other countries accepting the Palestinian, recognizing it. So there's infighting internationally. That's another data point where if this is a false peace, there's going to be a big curse that's coming in October, or September, I should say, September of 2026, all the way through 2027 to October. So the world is moving towards a tumultuous time period. And that infighting that's going on between the secular and the religious within Israel is a big part of the curse that's coming down. And so you tie this all in with the red heifer and the Temple Mount and international affairs and countries that are moving towards war but can't really afford it because of the huge debts that they've incurred from Lehman crash and the war on terror after 9/11. You add in the COVID stimulus. These countries can't afford a war, but yet it will happen. And so there's going to be huge amounts of inflation. So the world is moving towards a dangerous time period. And I'm very curious to understand, why did Israel not do the ritual slaughter of the red heifer. Now, from a religious standpoint, that's a big no-no. A big no-no. And why, another thing that was odd, is just that there were 5 red heifers that came from Texas and they were flown and taken care of by the Temple Institute in the West Bank, in Shiloh. So they're taking care of these animals. They're looked after and looked over to make sure that they're ritually pure. And then you have 3 that end up becoming ritually impure because of the hairs, the color of the hair. Why would you practice a ritual slaughter on one of these red heifers? There's nothing wrong with keeping them alive and allowing them to breed for potential future red heifers. Why would you kill off one? That I always thought was odd. So maybe the ashes are done, but it doesn't look like that the procedure was done properly based on the paraduma from Maimonides. All right, so it doesn't look like it was done properly. Why would they have done it on a red heifer that could potentially be a breeding animal for future red heifers? That never made sense to me. So I don't know. Did Israel do the red heifer ceremony or not? I'm not sure. I don't think they did. I don't think they did it properly. Now, if they didn't do it properly, we're moving to a period of time that if it's not done by 2026, Rosh Hashanah, September 11th, next year, there's going to be a curse coming down on Earth. And everyone's going to be involved.
Under Salhut in Amman, Jordan. Protests in solidarity with Palestinians are underway in cities across Europe, including London, where police have arrested at least 175 people. Protesters have been demanding the government drop a ban on the Palestine Action Group. The demonstration has gone ahead in defiance of calls from police to cancel. The Metropolitan Police says the protests draw resources away from protecting communities fearful after the deadly attack on a Jewish synagogue in Manchester on Thursday. In Spain, thousands of people have been marching in central Barcelona against the genocide in Gaza. The protesters say they want European leaders to take a tougher stance against Israel. And Palestinian flags have also filled the streets of Italy's capital for a 3rd day. Unions called for protests after Israel raided a Gaza-bound aid flotilla on Thursday. Hundreds of people marching on the streets of Rome and other cities. Milena Veselinovic is at the protest in Rome.
Well, there's a huge outpouring of support for Palestinians here in Rome. As you can see, this march right here, slowly making its way through the streets of the Italian capital. And the sentiment of the people here in the streets really aligns with what we know from the polling, showing that more than 70% of Italians support the Palestinian state. Now, why is that the case? Several reasons. Most of these demonstrations have been organized by the Italian unions, and for them, the cause of the Palestinian people really aligns with their worldview of rights and freedoms for the oppressed people. So I have to say, these demos are really attended by ordinary people as well. Now, secondly, what's interesting is that even those who back the right-wing government of Italy at the moment, they also support Palestinian statehood, and that could be perhaps because the Catholic Church has an outpost both in the occupied West Bank and also in Gaza. The late Pope Francis.
Now notice this. They go back to what I was saying about the red heifer not being slaughtered, ritually slaughtered. You have the Catholic Church, the Vatican, pushing for the Palestinians and the Palestinian state. yet that's antithetical to actually having the Temple Mount under the control of Israel and building of the third temple. You can't have both. They're mutually exclusive. They're not mutually inclusive. And there's nobody, not a Muslim, not a Christian, not the Pope, not even a Levite or a Israelite that can build the temple and reboot the Temple Mount, reboot the actual temple, other than a Cohen. There's nobody else in the world. Nobody. Not the Dalai Lama. Nobody. Not Buddha. Not nobody. Right? Just the Cohens. The Kohanim. So Israel doesn't do the slaughtering of that red heifer. The vessels can't be purified. The people can't be purified to build the temple. So it's as if the Jewish people are spitting in the face, using this as a metaphor, but spitting in the face of God. And God provides all these things during the COVID era to start getting ready for the rebuilding of the Temple Mount. But you have other religions, other countries, other politicians, they're trying to circumvent it, including the strife and the political unrest that's happening in Israel between the seculars and the conservatives or the Orthodox. So from God's point of view here, it's not that far beyond the pale to think, well, wait a minute here. Mankind should be cursed because they're not allowing for the temple to be rebuilt. The Jews aren't allowing it. The Jews aren't doing what they're supposed to do to get their act together and be peace amongst the tribes. The religious are not preparing the red heifer properly. The international community is circumventing the building of the third temple. So it's not beyond reason to think that the whole world will end up with a curse. You got the Vatican that literally is stating by having it a Palestinian state, you're preventing from Israel building the Temple Mount. That's a fact. Because who has control of the actual Temple Mount right now? It's the Muslims. It's not the Jews. It's that mosque. The Dome of the Rock. All right? So this is not going to play well for the whole international community. You know how it all plays out, I don't know. I think it's going to play out in a very bloody. I think we're moving towards World War III. And most of the blood won't be spilled in the Middle East. Most of the blood is going to be spilled. The United States is going to lose its economic prowess, its military prowess, and its hegemonic power with a war in the Pacific because we did not take a righteous path. And we sided on Esau, negative. I'm not going to go into the details about Esau positive, Esau negative, and the soul roots and the Ishmael and Jacob. But the thing is that it's looking like we're taking a path that's aligning with Esau negative, not Esau positive. On top of all these other things, like not having the ritual slaughter of the red heifer, the proper ritual slaughter of the red heifer. You had international community preventing the Temple Mount from being rebuilt. Well, that's not going to bode very well if you really believe in this messianic age.
Impulse to the diocese in Gaza. But that and all of this that what we're seeing in the streets of Rome on Saturday really doesn't align with the official policy of the Italian government, which is one of the biggest allies of Israel in the European Union. They, however, say that they have done more than any other European nation to help injured.
And so Satan is attached to negative Esau. Most of the world is attached to negative Esau. Their soul root. Most of the people that are protesting, they're just like what she said in Rome. Most of them are for a Palestinian state, which is antithetical to the actual rebuilding of the Third Temple. The Vatican is against it. Once the Third Temple is rebuilt, the Vatican is no longer no longer important. The Pope will mean nothing. So why would the Pope want the Temple Mount to be rebuilt? It would take a very, very humble person to actually say, you know what, I'm no longer needed. We're moved into a new age. The new Pope ain't that, trust me. So you have all these people that are on the wrong side. They're on the negative Esau side. And this is a way for Satan to trick, to prevent that Temple Mount from being rebuilt, because that's the death of Satan. The Messianic age is the death of evil. I'm telling you, 2026 is going to be a very, very, very big problem. Fourth quarter of 2026, the first, second, and third quarter of 2027. High probability of having a very bad outcome.
From Gaza and evacuate them. But speaking to people at this protest and others, they say that's still a very small number, about 150 people. It's nothing to be proud about. They say it only shames other countries and everyone should do more. Milena Veselinovic, Al Jazeera, Rome.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, Gaza's health system continues to buckle under the pressure of treating the sick, malnourished, and the injured. Also in the news, Japan is set to see its first ever female prime minister after a former minister wins the leadership of the board.
Okay, that's the broadcast for today. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great products that I have. Be prepared for the fall and the winter. It's going to be problematic, and you need to boost up that immune system. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.